what's happening? What's going on? Just killing some thick boys. Alright, publish that. Also, while I'm here, I should make a clip for right after that. Actually, I'm gonna pause that. So what's up? What's going on this Monday? Yes, Monday. I don't know if that's a good. I have to change that angle. Don't know how I feel about that. Well, that shelf behind me is a mess. That's our teammate's box, bud. That's our teammate's box, bud. It's our teammate's box, bud. Stop looting our teammate's box. What is wrong with you? Now you don't get to loot any boxes. Now you don't get to loot any boxes. One after the third punch. Boom. Let me pause that. You don't. Teammates box. Alright, cool. Cool. I gotta download the first one. So I gotta delete that, close, open this, find that, do the stuff and the things. Find the zero hero. Oh, I don't know. That's a bad view. I look like a dum-dum. I don't know about that. I don't know. Maybe I put that too high. Oops. Different with the bed's head. The bear's head in it. Boom. The bears. What's up, Zero? Were you at Zero? I am doing swell. Doing super swell. Yo, shit. We got fucking Dylon over here spitting hot fire. Dylon. Their shit be confusing. Oh, I've done interviews like that. It's weird. Yeah. Okay. Maybe they pay you in cashews. So it says he's earned 30,000 in paid commissions.
Hello? Baby?
Yeah, babe.
Where did you put the $8?
Where did I put the what?
The $8.
In your pocket of your hoodie.
Okay.
Yep. Right. That's an MLM. That's what that sounds like. Yo, that's really that really sounds like an MLM. Like, oh, and we're gonna have a convention in Vegas, and be sure that you're there, and you're. Right.
I don't care about going on a company
Right, if it's
convention, vacation,
that's weird.
orgy, whatever.
If it's a legitimate business, then
it is.
they
It's very
I mean,
weird.
like, just I'm just here for my paycheck. I show up, I do the work you want me to do, and you pay me. You know what I mean? Like, it's very maybe because they don't use the dollar sign. Maybe all of these things are included in the $30,000 he made in commissions. So part of that was the $4,000 that they paid because he reached a certain level. The $4,000 they paid for him to go to the Bahamas, and the $6,000 they paid for whatever. You mean like?
Yeah, they don't make it out like that though. Even though that's a logical assumption. I didn't even think about that, but that is a logical assumption. But then they have this table that says you get cash bonuses with this X amount of paid commissions, but it could still be like that. It could be like that. But it's just very weird, and like they're trying to make it like okay, this paper they have says agent compensation at a glance. And dude, you wouldn't believe all the different listen, this is a little they have this table laid out, right? And it's got columns that go years 1 through 10 and some hypothetical numbers, right? And then the rows are labeled, total first year commission, that makes sense, Kickstarter program, agent accelerator program, personal referral program, renewal commissions, quarterly bonus program, field training allowances, agent benefit bucks, retirement savings program. And it has all these different ways you can get compensated, and it's just like, okay. And he's talking about the mean annual income for them is like $89,000 a year. And then he says this cheesy shit. He's like, now you could consider yourselves a little above the mean. This is a room full of sharp-looking people. And it wasn't. I mean,
it wasn't. They definitely look like dum-dums.
No. No, there was me, and I only have one suit, but I wore a suit because they didn't dress formally, and there were 2 other dudes in suits, and there were some women there that were just wearing like casual.
There was a bunch of women wearing trucker hats,
like maybe something like a yeah, right. But there was like women that would be dressed like a receptionist or something in there, and I guess they thought of that as formal. But it was not it wasn't like some standout room of go-getters or nothing. And I mean, like, I was just like, what the fuck? But he was like, but if you're a type of person that considers yourself middle of the class, then, $90,000 isn't bad for a middle of the class. And I'm thinking to myself, $90,000? That sounds like some pie in the sky bull.
Did you ever see Boiler Room?
For
Sorry, my bad. Go ahead.
No, I feel like I've heard of it. No.
Okay. Yeah, it's Giovanni. Yes, Ribisi. And he's like a hustler, and his dad's like a lawyer or a judge or something, and he's in college, but he's like hustling his where he's staying. It's not like a dorm, it's like housing on campus or whatever. And he opens up like a gambling, like a speakeasy, basically. He's like making all this money, and he fails out of college because like making so much money, he doesn't like go to class and stuff. Somebody he knows gets this job at some like brokerage firm, but it's not in like not on Wall Street. It's like out in the sticks somewhere in like Jersey or some shit, and they're paying the most in commission. So like, when you close these deals and they're paying like whatever, like when everybody's paying like 2 and 3%, they're getting like 10 or whatever. And at the one point there's this scene where Ben Affleck steps in the room, and he's like, and it's a similar thing, like everybody comes in for their interview, and it's like 10 dudes there, and that's a sharp looking room. You know what I mean? Like, they're all in suits, they're all dressed right, and he's giving his crazy speech, and he asks like, is anybody here did anybody here pass their C7 exam? And one dude raises his hand, he's like, all right, get your stuff and get the fuck out. He's like, what? Why? He goes, get out. He's like, we don't hire agents, we make them in here, get out. And then Yeah,
Oh,
then he's
what
like
the
telling you,
fuck?
he's like, all these people, your parents tell you you think you're a loser, or whatever. Like, well, you get to look at their face in 2 years when you're buying them a fucking Lamborghini. If you wanna live fast and get rich, this is where you do it. You come here for a couple years, I'll make you a fucking millionaire. And it's just like this ridiculous. It's a really good speech. You should Google it and look it up. I'm not gonna ruin it, but that's what it
I
sounds
might do
like.
that was basically,
What you were at.
dude. When you say that, I'll add a couple more aspects that parallel that. Okay, he was like, he did say, well, first he mentioned that like it's a room, you know, you're on a team, but everybody's competing at
Right.
the same time, and he was like, he said basically they said, you know, you're gonna, this isn't a 9 to 5 thing. You're gonna have to be working hard for 2 or 3 years to do better down the road.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah,
basically the
that
same shit.
sounds.
Basically, this like a slightly lower key version. It wasn't too much
Yeah.
lower key than that, but it was a little bit. Um, it was basically that, and that's what it sounds like. And yeah, I'm just gonna call him back and be like, no, thanks. So, but yeah.
I mean, it can't hurt to try it. I mean, I don't know
It was
exactly
funny.
how they're
It
gonna
was
pay,
like,
but
no, I'm not gonna try it because like what you said about the we make
Right.
agents here. They were playing up their training
Mm.
program, and they didn't mention this. I'm sure they would mention this if I did go back in. But I went on message board. I googled something about them, and I saw a link that said, "Is Banker's Life a legit company?" And apparently, other people that have like put their resume like on Monster.com have gotten calls from them real quick. And I guess it's probably people that list sales in their resume or some keyword that
Okay.
they're looking for. And but like so other people have done it, and from what I gathered from the forums, you have to be licensed first of all to like sell insurance and shit like that. So you get to pay for your licensing, and then if you're with them for 90 days after that, they'll reimburse you. So I would have to pay however much that shit costs, which I'm
Right.
not going to do. And yeah, so yeah, that was like, I was like, what the fuck, you know, what kind of business doesn't even train you? And they had a guy that obviously works for them on the message board that put up like, why would bankers pay for you to become a licensed insurance agent if you're not going to work for them, you know? And I mean, sure, that sounds legit, but at the same time, it's like, why would you expect people to come in there? Well, I have to buy a starter kit
Yeah.
to work for your fucking
Yeah.
company,
Well, I
you
mean,
know?
there are some companies.
yeah, so it's
Right.
the same
There are
shit.
some companies who do, like trucking companies. They'll pay for you to go to school, but then you have to work for them for like the next 3
Well,
years or
that's
whatever,
more-
so they make their money back. So there's things
Yeah.
that do that, but it's not like, oh, you get reimbursed. It's like you come here, we train you, we do all that, you get your license, and you're signing the contract. And sometimes they even give like sign-on bonuses. So you sign a contract for 3 years to work here, or 5 years, and you get like
Yeah, you don't
right
pay them,
$700, and then
although
whatever.
you make a commitment
Right.
to work for them. Yeah, and I mean a CDL, you know, I mean that's a known legitimate. Well, I mean, of course, a license to sell insurance is legitimate too, but a CDL just somehow seems more like
Right, it's
legit
like, yeah.
in some way, and like the thing you would be going through to get it, you know. I wonder how much. Do you know what it costs to get a CDL?
I did talk to somebody a couple years ago. It was like $2,300 or something.
Okay, I mean now that even though that's a significant amount of money for the kind of money you can make trucking, that's not. I would almost like rather work some other job and save that up and then go get it, and then I wouldn't have a commitment to work for anybody if I didn't want to, and I could go to any trucking
Right.
company and apply and, you know, say I've got
I
it.
mean,
you
you,
know?
you could,
But
yeah.
that's not too
I mean,
bad.
it's
That's cheaper than a trade school.
yeah. My trade school was like 30 fucking grand. I don't know.
Whoa,
Yeah.
dude. God. Well, how long did you go? with that? I'm just
16
curious how it
months.
breaks down.
So
Okay. That's a lot of
yes, it
fucking money.
is. It was, and I loved it.
Did you happen to see? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Did you happen to see? I would say a trade school would probably give you the better education. But did you happen to look around and see if any community colleges offered part of that?
No, it was kind of like the end of, or the means to an end for me, and turned out not to be. But that's what it was. That's what I was.
Oh, sorry.
Kind of positioned myself as. I was working for a guy. My brother got me a job working for this guy, and it wasn't a bad job. I actually really enjoyed the job, except the guy was super fucking flaky. So my brother got me a job, and I was making $10 an hour under the table, which was decent. This is.
Whoa, that's not.
Yeah, this
not
is.
bad.
I mean, years ago, $10 an hour under the table. He was. He went in between tenants, and he had some deals with different like property management companies. So he'd go in between tenants. You move out, we'd come in, we'd clean the shit out of it, paint if we needed to, fix holes or whatever, and then I could move it. You know what I mean? Change the carpets if we had to or whatever, and then. But he was now one of the management companies, because my brother also dealt with them. My brother sells carpets. They would be like behind all the time. So when he would be like, "Oh, they didn't pay me," like it's believable from the one, but then it happens so often that like there was one point where like, he didn't have any money to pay me, so I let the like $200 slide. Okay, I let it slide to the following day. Or the following week, I go to work from whatever. This week comes, I'm expecting to get $400. He gives me like $150 and says they didn't pay him. He doesn't have the money or whatever. So now it's getting difficult because he owed me $400. He paid me $150. So now, I mean, it's $250 floating. I work again for him for another 20 hours. And that was the thing. He didn't like to work a whole lot. He worked 10 to 3 some days. You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't go in early. You know what I mean? Like, I'd meet him at, like, wherever we were going. I even tried to talk him into, like, letting me go in early and clean and all that stuff so that he can follow me and paint if it needs paint or whatever. And he's like, yeah, that's a good idea. But then, like, that never happened. Can you crawl off? I'm right below you.
I've swapped with the guy up here. I'm dropping.
I'm coming up to you. Oh, there's somebody right here.
Let me. Okay. I'm gonna drop off.
Alright, he ran away. But so yeah, it just became this complicated mess, and I was just sick of like, here, I'll heal you. I just dropped my thing.
Oh, thanks. I'm looking for. Here he comes. Here he comes. I got no ammo.
What do you need? Light?
Shoddy.
There we go.
Oh, nice.
Oh, don't let our fucking teammate get any of that.
I just got the. I got a hit.
Okay, I picked up the. Oh no, okay. I thought I picked up the heavy ammo. I didn't. Okay.
I can give you this.
No.
Back. Oh, it won't let me. Oh, that's a.
No, if you want it or whatever, you use it. That's fine. Here, there's a scout in this. There's a.
Oh, no, I was just saying this shield's empty. Oh, right. My bad.
No. There's a. Yeah, there's in this box.
Scout,
yeah.
Okay, that dude didn't even loot the shit. Okay. He must have just took some ammo. Oh, I'm coming.
But yeah, so it was just like I had enough, and I was like, you know what? I can't rely on somebody else.
Absolutely.
I need to do something where I can like make my own shit and whatever. So that's why I went to school.
How now? What did? Oh, I got you. Okay, I thought you were saying that mechanic school was a means to an end to work for that guy, and I was like,
yeah, no, it was so I didn't have to do that anymore. I could get it. I would actually, because like I had a criminal record and all that fun stuff. Oh, somebody's shooting our teammate, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm coming up. Yeah. He's hurt bad. I busted his shield. I think I hit him for about 110 or 20.
Oh my god, it wouldn't let me shoot straight down. Alright, I got him.
No.
Oh, here, come, grab this gold helmet, so you get the fast recharges on there.
Oh, thanks. You got
Yeah.
blue armor, right?
I just grabbed the vault key, and this vault is closed. Let's go get that.
Extended heavy mag here.
I'll take the light ammo. Yeah, let's go.
All right.
I am repairing myself.
Here, I'll throw a zip. Well, I mean,
Nah,
was dumb.
to get you
I
there
guess, I
faster
don't
than
know.
teammate. Fuck him.
Repairing.
Yeah, this guy might be okay. He wasn't like, even though he hit that box quickly after you killed him, he didn't like snatch a bunch of shit out of it. I noticed, like he didn't seem to. He left like both guns.
Hey, there's that. There's a purple shield. Okay, you got that shit.
Yeah.
I need it.
Oh,
Never
I'm
mind.
trying to cancel that. Yeah, there we go.
Oh. Wait, did he just drop a gold
but
bag?
yeah,
Why is he
yeah.
dropping a gold bag?
Yeah, I think. What do you want?
He wanted one of us
Oh,
to get
he
the
was
gold
like-
bag and him get the blue bag.
Oh well. I guess he's a nice guy. I almost kind of want to like give him something, but I have nothing to give.
Maybe he needs me to drop my
We all
my
have
health
purple
jar.
helmets?
Let me do that. I didn't
Oh,
realize
yeah,
it's
okay.
probably.
Oh yeah. I didn't think of that either. Yeah, I didn't really. I guess the teabagging was a draw.
Yeah, I started teabagging back with him. I'm like, what are we doing? Are we dancing? What's happening?
It's the teabag dance. Yeah, but yeah, that's smart, dude. That like, that's bullshit when somebody screws you on your pay.
Yeah, and like I
That's
just felt like there wasn't much I could do because
no,
like I had a record. Like I was happy to get a $10 an hour job. Like, and it was like a favor through my brother.
oh, right.
Like
I misunderstood.
I don't know.
Oh yeah, and you don't want to be like, yeah, I totally understand that. When somebody does a favor for you, you kind of feel an obligation.
Yeah, and it was just, like, so I told my brother, he's like, nah, dude, fuck that. Like, if he's not paying you right, like, forget that. Like,
Yeah, dude. But I understand, like, not wanting to disappoint him. I'm glad, he
Yeah.
understands. Is your brother
Yes.
Pat? I just saw him in my recommended friends on Facebook.
yeah.
I was stalking your family, man.
Well, consider your stalking complete. That's all of my family that's alive.
You and your brother have a strong resemblance. Do you both look like your dad?
I guess. I don't know. I don't really think so. I probably look more like my dad than my brother did. My dad was
Yeah.
kind of heavy. So, like, I don't know, he has a rounder face like I do. My brother's kind of got like a long head.
Already inside turbocharger.
Yeah, I just kind of like was looking at your brother and thinking of you, and I mean, I don't mean you look like twins or nothing, but I mean I can see some resemblance. But yeah. Oh, enemy. Here an enemy.
I am making contact with enemy. Opening fire on me. I am repairing myself.
I don't have any. I have 2 big shield cells. Here, take this.
Shit!
Take that. Oh,
Some,
I'm coming to you. I'm coming to you. I'm coming to you.
I'll try.
Hey, let's get back here. So,
Open your eyes, something may be here.
I'm back.
Okay.
I'm on the ground.
Shit, I'm picking that back up. Yeah, okay, me too. I got.
Here, I
torn
got a
out
big
from
one for you.
below,
I got a
and
big
can
shield
see
cell
where
for
it
you.
is. Oh. Hold up. Okay. Thank you. Oh shit, another squad. You want me to zip us out of here?
Nah, I kind of want to try to save our buddy. Oh,
I'm just
okay.
throwing it. I'm just throwing it. Yeah, okay.
Giving my shields a recharge.
I'll be right with you.
Oh, somebody's fucking laser rifle. Get in cover, bud. Oh, they're not dead over here. They just got somebody up.
You know it just us. We got to watch it.
All right, he's a box now. We can.
They're inside the bottom. Somebody. Oh, I'm getting away
Yeah,
from
let's.
the
All right,
cliff.
let's grab our buddy's banner and go.
Okay.
Oh, someone just Birdman special.
Shit. Yeah. Oh God, that dude's got a fucking killer sniper scope.
Can we switch?
There was still a dude from the first squad behind us. Oh, and I didn't even see that one. Shit, I'm just running.
Giving my shields a recharge.
Where did that ping? Okay, that's in front of us. All right, let's go do that.
Grappling. Great. Already inside the ring.
Heavy ammo here.
Recharging shields.
Oh shit! Can you zip us up to the roof?
I've almost got another zip line. Yeah, in just a second. Just a
Yeah,
second.
somebody just called that on where we just were. So we're probably being chased by a squad.
Yeah, here they're in the building too. I'm respawning. We just got scanned.
There's heavy ammo here. If I'm
picking up this 301. This hemlock can suck it.
there's a blue light mag there. I just pinged at the
Oh,
front.
thank
I called this in.
Hell yeah.
Shoot here. Level 3. Optics here. Sniper.
I guess these people are either lurking or went to another building. No, I hear them again.
Okay, not too bad. Not too bad.
You hear me?
Yeah.
Made it out of that. I didn't think. I thought we were screwed McGrewed there for
No,
a
that
second.
was.
Somebody zipping?
I was getting shot. Okay.
They just jumped off that side of the building.
Contact with hostile.
Oh, Boss Sauce jumped off.
Oh,
Come on,
Oh,
Boss
no.
Sauce. What are you doing? Okay, he downed him though.
this is middle management sauce at best. Oh, okay.
Oh, it's two of them.
Reloading. Here, throw me to me.
Oh shit! Just punched my mic. I'm sorry.
No problem. Oh shit. In here
Okay,
woods. In here
I'm
woods.
healing up. I'm healing up.
Shit. I hit the stupid trap instead of eliminating it. Got it.
Nice.
We killed the last member. Good work, team.
Standard stock here. Level 2.
Giving my shields a
Standard stock
recharge.
here. Level 2.
Yeah, I'm gonna grab this 99 actually.
I got some heavy ammo for you. If you
There's
need it.
somebody just. No, I'm good. There's a blue standard stock there.
Standard stock here.
Somebody just picked the white one up out of this box.
you.
Just up
I
ahead.
don't know if that was you or not.
Heavy ammo here.
I'm dropping a shitload if he needs it or whatever. I've got double light.
Yeah,
right
you know
now,
what? I
so-
might switch to double light also.
30 seconds. Rings close.
I'll go with this scout.
Body shield here. Extended heavy
Energy
mag here.
ammo. Got a hop up here. Got an extended energy mag.
There's all those things.
Level 2. Energy
Someone
ammo
was-
Man,
here.
all kinds of good
Yeah, I was just-
goodies.
Syringe here. Shield cell here.
Yeah, I can actually use that shield. So. Ring's moving. We gotta go.
Oh shit. Okay. I got it. I can throw us a zip. Oh fuck! I'm going the wrong way. Mommy.
Oh shit! I'm out of the building.
Oh, okay.
You-
okay. I'm on
Okay.
the other side.
Do what you gotta do.
Get ready. It's zip line.
Okay.
Yeah, we got heals. We got heals. Oh shit.
Yeah.
Enemies ahead, apparently.
Oh, shit! This is putting us into a corner.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bangalore just called in a
Trying to heal.
on us.
Okay.
Shit,
She just called
this
in
is
the
not a
mojo.
good position to be in.
No.
Oh, maybe we can go out through the train tunnel.
Oh, is there? Oh shit. Is that our buddies? there?
No, yes,
Oh,
yeah,
God.
it is.
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
so
it
fucked up.
was.
Okay.
Recharging shield.
I got you.
Thank you.
But I think the next circle is going to be on the other side. We should need to go through the train tunnels.
Hey, Graham.
What up, Graham?
Yo, what's up, Joe? What's up, Anonymous?
What's happening? You know, Anonymous. He's
What's going on?
I'm running
Alright.
towards the train tunnel.
saving the world. He said, you know,
Huh?
Anonymous. He's saving the world one hack at a time. Oh, Anonymous.
Oh shit, we got the wall. I can throw us a zip in just a
Okay.
few seconds.
Shit, where's it?
We can't check out this way, brother.
1 minute. The ring isn't far.
Well, and we can squeeze through that a little bit.
Let's explore this way.
There's people
Oh,
that way,
did
but there's a tiny crack, so we have to
They
fight our
run?
way
Did they
through.
run?
But if we go that way, that's gonna fuck us up. It's the fourth circle. It's,
Oh, yeah, we can't really.
I thought that we could
Yeah. Okay, I'm going.
survive long enough to run through. I didn't realize it was the fourth circle.
No, I see what you mean. We couldn't make it through the tunnel. Hey, Grim, can you unplug, replug your mic?
Or stop repeating everything we say.
Unplug, replug.
Thank you.
Does it
Echo.
sound better now?
Yeah.
Sound better
Yeah,
now?
I got it.
Sound better now?
Oh,
Good.
good, 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 good.
10 seconds. The ring is fairly close.
All right, there's boxes here. Oh, oh, they're
Oh,
above
what the
us.
fuck? Damn, how am I missing it?
I guess I just hit him with the grenade. I just did 9 damage with my grenade. Oh, the ring's moving again. Shit. It hurts so
Way to go,
bad.
way to go.
Oh my god. I'm gonna go down.
Oh, there's 2 of them that were up there on the rocks.
Ah. Fuck, man.
Fuck out, I ain't gonna make
The
it.
ring hurts so bad.
If you
Now
can
I'm
make
down.
It, make it. Boss sauce.
Run, boss sauce.
Boss sauce, make it for the team. Do it for the Gipper, bitch.
Come on, boss sauce. You got this, brother.
Yeah, these fuckheads were in an ambush spot on a scrim up on a cliffside I didn't even know you could get to. And they probably killed
Alright.
themselves and us.
Yeah.
Being douches like that.
Nice kills, though. And damage.
Yeah.
Look at us go.
I was just
Yeah.
Are
telling
you guys done?
Yeah, I was just telling Joe about this shady ass life insurance company. I went to their presentation today and he told
Oh
me about
yeah,
it.
that was today. How'd it go?
Yeah, shit was shady. Like, I mean, it's a legit company, but the way they talk about compensating you and stuff, it's very bullshitty, and they're like give you these stupid come-ons, like they're trying to make the job sound good, but like I was telling Joe, one of the fucking things in their pitch was like, so here's some of the things you can expect, you know, when you're an agent or whatnot, and it's like mentions a sales convention in the Bahamas. Like I give a fuck. like who wants to go on a vacation that's part sales convention? I mean, what the fuck you going to do at something like that, you know? And it's just, it was retarded. And Joe started describing this movie Boilerplate to me. That's basically the
Boiler
exact same
Room,
thing
yeah.
I experienced today. Boiler Room, yeah.
You've seen Boiler Room, right?
But yeah, it
Grim?
was kind of funny.
You've seen Boiler
what?
Room, right?
You'll sit back and say, oh yeah, I remember that.
I don't know. What's it about?
It's
Sounds good. That's
Giovanni
really
Ribisi is like this hustler kid that gets recruited into this brokerage firm that's not working on Wall Street, and it's all a scam. The guy who runs it actually owns all these shell companies that they're selling stock for, so he pays them a huge commission. Vin Diesel's in it. A bunch of people.
Vin
Yeah.
Diesel's in it. I mean, it sounds like Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah, but it's not. Wolf of Wall Street, I couldn't even watch the whole thing.
I might have seen it. You couldn't even watch
Yeah.
the whole thing, you said? Hey, and like
Yeah, it was.
Is that the one where
Yes.
McConaughey's talking about jacking off a certain number?
I don't know about that, but it's where he beats his chest at the lunch table.
Well, like where he's like talking to Rookie and he's like,
The one where he blows coke in her butt.
Yeah, there's
Oh, of course.
way too much drug use for me.
Whole squad landed in the little car I tried.
Oh man, I fell off trying to
Obviously.
pull some moves.
oh, dude, by pure luck, I landed on top of a car.
Yeah, I landed us there, and then I fell off trying to get into the car.
I'm hearing people. All I have is a scout and.
I'm dropping down. I got nothing.
B2020.
Woo! Suck my dick, bitch.
Hell yeah.
I'm down
Right, I
one
got a
of them.
prowler.
Yeah, me too. I got a Prizzle
I'm
now.
coming.
Oh, someone got the party started.
I got a scout and a peacekeeper. I'm coming.
Woo! The
Nice
other dude
job,
said he's
man.
a bitch as well. That guy called me a bitch. So there's 2 down.
I
There
called
we
him
go.
a bitch.
You sure did.
I'm coming.
Alright,
Way
I
to
got
go,
2
Grim.
small shells and that's it.
I got a heal bot.
I got four bursts of the prowler.
Heal bot.
There's some smalls.
Shield cell here.
Recharging shields.
Okay, anybody need a syringe? Oh, I'll probably need that. Okay.
But yeah, pretty much everything
Oh, no,
Joe
this is good,
said
man.
was in that movie. This guy said in one form or the other.
Yeah.
It was pretty funny. Yeah. Oh, and Joe, you know how you said that he was like, anybody in here, you know, got a CA license,
Yeah.
whatever it was. Like, I don't think he would have told anybody to get the fuck out of here, but he did say he knew that nobody in there had a fucking license to sell insurance, and he was like, anybody in here got a license to sell insurance? And you know, nobody raised their hand
Yeah.
as far as I know. And like, you know, but yeah, it was very, very sleazy semen.
Sleazy
Yeah.
semen.
He got
Yeah,
all that
semen.
sleazy semen.
Some of that sleazy semen. Shit.
Woo!
Oh, that's
Go!
nice.
And guess what's in the bitch?
Hell yeah.
Optics here.
Go for it, Joester.
Somewhere. I don't have the key.
You don't want the
Okay,
you don't want the
it's
shirt.
best.
No, go for it.
I already have
I
one.
usually
okay, so-
snatch at the first sign of opportunity, so every once in a while you gotta spread that shit around.
You know what time it
It's
is?
sleep.
It's
I was gonna say
time.
sleazy semen time. You gotta spread that shit around like sleazy semen.
Grappling.
Yeah, buddy, this stuff was kind of sleazy
Yeah.
semen today.
He's like, I'm sleazy semen every day. What are you talking about, bro?
The fucking dude that was the branch manager or whatever was a fucking. He wasn't a giant, but he was at least like 6'4". He's a big dude. It was kind of weird, like when he was standing up giving the presentation, and I was sitting down, I didn't really notice, you know. But then, like when I went up to shake hands with him or whatever, like he's a big motherfucker. But yeah, I won't be going back there.
Andre the Fudge and Giant.
Oh, shit. There's nothing left for Joe. Here,
Yeah, I'm good.
Joe,
No, I got a purple shotgun bolt. I'm good.
Oh, and the vest too, right? You
But
got the vest?
I
Or
got that
you
from
already have it?
before.
He had that out of the.
Oh, okay.
So it's all gravy.
I wonder if I can do like that one kid that got 4 headshots in a row as fast as you'd pull the trigger with the P2020 on me the other day.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was ridiculous. Yeah.
120 damage. Bang, 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 bang. You're dead.
Header mag here. Level
Yeah.
Ooh, a heavy Mac. Yeah, I need one of them.
extended header mag here. Level
Oh
one.
shit, my controller batteries are low. I'll probably be okay for this game.
Uh-oh. If you know like I know, you better call the popo and get off the corner. Alright, I'm gonna call in my special somewhere.
Calling in a lifeline package.
Hey,
Heavy
rap.
ammo here. Heavy ammo here.
Yeah, I could use some of that shit.
Heavy ammo here.
You're dropping a bunch of light.
I need all ammo. There you go, Joe.
You guys don't need that? Okay, I guess not. Oh, I got one
Nah.
too.
We're all knocked
I don't
out.
need it either. So look at them
Oh, you already have
apples.
one? What? When did you get
I don't
that?
know.
I thought I checked after we left the vault. Make sure everybody got something.
Yeah, there's
Hey, you
somebody
got
up there.
something?
Yeah, it's over there.
I think there's somebody closer. I could be.
Oh,
Yeah,
somebody
the-
closer.
the
Yeah,
fight-
yeah.
The fighting's where Joe pinged. I thought I heard.
I think they're in here.
footsteps.
Might be something good this way.
They're not in the
Water on the
bottom.
other side. Oh, okay.
I could use a choke if
Going
we
up
see it.
top.
Got a hop up here.
They might have been down the hill from us or something.
Yeah, maybe.
I think I just heard something charging up too.
I'm hearing somebody for sure.
Okay.
Got one here.
I don't see anybody with my threat detector.
They're up top here on the roof, I think.
I didn't see anybody, but yeah, we can go check. Wait, I think I just saw them over there.
Might be something good this way.
They're still on the roof. There's definitely somebody on the roof. I'm hearing it.
Yeah. Oh, I hear him right below me. Oh, there's one out in the yard right there. Running around the corner.
Did you just use a special Grim? Right here, in here.
Were they inside?
There's one of them. Nice. She's down good. Thank you for the save.
Good job.
Finish it real quick.
Oh yeah, let me. Where'd she go? I got her.
They're up top.
Oh,
Somebody
shit.
else up top. Be careful.
Protect me. This will refill my shields. Thank you.
I don't see him. I don't see him.
We-
Oh,
They're all dead.
nice. Oh, dude, a third gold?
Yeah, man.
I'm
Damn,
incredulous.
We're just straight up ballers right now, man.
Ballin'.
Heavy ammo. Light ammo here.
All right, I'm gonna drop my
301.
heal thing. Where you at? Oh wait, no, I have 18 seconds on it. Never mind.
Oh, here's a choke. Here's a choke.
Oh yes, thank you.
Optics here.
Yep.
Close range.
What? Oh, circle sight. Okay, I get that.
All right, my thing's back now. Ready? Yeah, I forgot all about doing an execution recharges all shields, so that's why I was like, let me get it.
Oh, that's why you
Yeah.
yelled something.
That's why you were yelling the stuff I wasn't paying attention
You
to.
have to have a. Do you have to have a certain item to
Nope.
recharge all shields?
It used to
like
be
that
the
or not?
gold
Oh, those
shield,
birds were
but
happening.
all shields do it now.
Oh,
Yeah.
stepping into our territory.
They're probably sniping from the
They
tower.
are.
We're all inside the ring. Good.
Yeah, I see movement up there. Yep.
Okay.
How about all three of us jump up at once?
We all
Okay, I'm
zip up.
almost there. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna kick it out.
Two down.
Two down.
Grim, execute him. Execute him. Get your shield back. Yeah, right here, right there.
Where is he?
Contact with hostile.
Man, that was G as can be.
Here, I'll drop my heal thing.
I already.
Oh shit. Arc Star. Oh no, my bad. I heard something else. Thought it was an Arc Star landing. Anybody got any heavy?
No.
I'm not like out, but
Let's
I'm not
check.
doing
Where's this
too
other
good.
box? Where'd the other guy go? Or he didn't die.
there was only two. Only.
No, one
Where's
of them
that?
jumped off.
Okay, I see him. He's right here. He's
Somebody's
right
right here though.
Two dudes. Two dudes.
There's another
Oh, there's people
squad.
behind us.
Okay. Oh shit. Shit, somebody's getting somebody up. Right
One
there.
of them is the robot for his teammates. Oh, he got up. Oh. You guys went
Stay
the other
down.
way.
Give me your ammo, bitch.
This guy's trying to get up.
I'm coming.
He's
Joe.
got a self-revive shield.
We've taken out the kill.
Yeah, he's about to get. Fucked.
Zero, you're about to die.
There we go. Thank you.
Oh, there's a gold Eva in one of those boxes.
I'm healing.
All right,
Oh shit!
it's in that far box.
I thought I had a med kit. Oh, I
Alright.
don't need that. Thank you though. They're badass, but I like what I got.
Yeah, I got a gold sight on my Peacekeeper, so I don't want to switch.
You don't have a cell.
Yeah.
Thank
All right, I'm gonna go get Grim.
you. Dude, I can't believe we survived
shit.
that shit.
I think we got to go this way anyway, Zero. For the circle.
Okay.
Somebody zipping?
Okay.
That's it. That's a dude that
I'm
came
not-
back for his
I'm
friends.
down.
That's what I was like.
But he's not. He didn't turn to a box though. He's getting himself up too.
He's probably.
He does.
Old shit. Yep. Not for long.
Nice.
Yeah, you.
Oh no! Oh, I shouldn't have used my thing. He's got a gold shield.
Hey, I'm dropping some of those batteries. It just picked them all up at once.
No, you're good. You're good. You do what you gotta do.
Drop it. Drop it. It won't let me drop it. There
All
we
right,
go.
I'm gonna pick up this gold sight for someone later,
Yeah.
unless you want it.
Here's a med. You have a
Yeah.
med kit?
You got 10
Yeah, let's go.
seconds.
I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah, let me-
Yeah. Is there a place to? Will you ping it, Grim? Oh, okay, okay. I
Oh,
hear
shit.
somebody. I think.
All right, I'm gonna slide and heal behind this wall. Oh, why? I thought I selected med kit already.
Okay.
Yourself up a bit.
You're close to the circle.
All right, so you want
Yeah,
to
I hear
take the
shit
zip
going
line?
down. Yeah, I can. Yeah, I'm right behind you.
Let's explore this
I was
way.
going to say I could throw a zip, but I don't need to.
I picked up that extra gold sight, so
Grim, all I can give you myself is a longbow. Oh, okay. Here's.
I'll find something and I'll just.
Oh, that's a longbow here anyway. Underneath that. So,
there's an Eva with a purple bolt. I can drop you some shotgun ammo if you want.
I'm dropping some heals for you.
There you go, Grim.
I just.
Oh no, I need. Can't drop all of those. I need some of that shotgun.
Can't drop off
Yeah,
that.
here I'll drop. There, I can drop 8.
Shotgun ammo here.
Well, I'll come back for it.
I'll bring it to you. Bring it.
Damn, it keeps putting the circle maximum far away from us.
Oh, look at all those heals. There's like 5 syringes here.
Here's a helmet.
Can you spare any heavy ammo? I have 0.
I'm
I
almost.
don't know. I have.
With
I
0.
don't have
almost
any
out.
heavy.
Alright, I'll.
Oh well, here, I'll give you my, I'll give you 20 rounds.
Only 200
Yeah.
squads remain. I love it.
I don't need that shotgun
Okay.
stuff. I found a 301 and I have 20 bullets.
Oh, 20,
Okay, here, I can drop you
26
some
rounds.
light bullets. I got plenty of that to drop.
I have a clip and a I have 55 in the Spitfire and 10 in the longbow.
10 seconds, a ring's just ahead.
Wait, you're double heavy? And that's all you
Yeah.
have?
Yeah, but I mean, it's one clip of each.
Ammo here.
Okay.
Do you hear somebody, Grim?
No. Yeah, they're over by the care packages. I can see them.
Oh, where's the care package? Can you ping it?
They're right over there. They're looting all the boxes over there.
Oh shit! Oh shit! Okay. Shit!
I was just shot from the left.
Shit! I threw 3 nades. They're hurting a little bit from my nades. I'm thought.
One's
I'm
down.
sorry.
Oh, that hurts a bit. We're being shot from the.
Enemy down.
Oh shit! Oh shit! The storm! No! Mommy!
I thought I was going the right
Oh, come on, man.
I was not.
I did so much damage there.
Enemy
Oh, they're not gonna let me get up.
We should have. I shouldn't have attacked. We should have bypassed them, but I didn't. Well, I don't know if we even could. They probably saw us.
Yeah,
you
no, they
started
definitely
it?
saw us.
I was
Well,
still trying
I did, but we were.
Yeah,
like
we're like 10 feet
15
apart.
feet
Yeah.
Away from them.
Shit.
I wish I'd had my gun out instead of my Bernie sticks, though.
Yeah, I hate being caught off guard like that. Yeah, that was nice. Damn, 1,100 damage.
Yeah, that was pretty sweet.
Ah, Peacekeeper was working there. I might have to try to use that more.
Oh, are you using
Yeah.
the Peacekeeper?
So now I need to deal 100 damage with Bangalore's Rolling Thunder. Actually, dealing 200 damage as crypto might be easier. And then once I do the... Oh, Zero, you gotta change your batteries in your controller or something?
Oh,
Oh,
thanks.
yeah.
I need knockdowns and fuel depot.
Okay.
I'm not really sure where fuel depot's at.
It's like a semicircle building kind of in the middle by Sorting Factory, I think.
Okay.
But once I get this 200 damage with crypto, then we could switch to ranked if y'all want. I guess
Oh,
we
yeah,
can play
sure.
ranked while I'm crypto. It's just he's not one of my top characters, so.
Right. Top 69.
Yeah,
dudes.
man. He's number 70.
I am extremely ready for this. I cannot wait to win this match, friend.
Thanks for reminding me about my batteries. I always think I'm going to remember at the end of the match and rarely do.
Alright, so Fuel Depot is
Often wrong, but never in doubt.
right there.
Yeah, Q.
How many knockdowns do you need, you know?
Just knock down a 4. We don't have to keep going to fuel depot. I'm just saying, you know, it'd be cool to drop there once anyway.
Yeah, well. It's one of
See
your
what
dailies.
happens. Yeah, it's a weekly from like,
Oh, okay.
I don't know, 5 or 6 or 4 or something. A previous week.
Alright, the roof is cleared. I got the grenade.
Friends, there is an extended energy magazine here.
Is there a gun to put that on? No. Okay.
I got Havoc.
Okay.
I could use it.
Right up here.
I found an extended energy.
Thank you.
Level 2. If you don't want to get caught, better get back in the ring.
You hearing somebody?
I think that was one of us. I kind of thought I did too, but
I see him.
I don't have a gun.
okay.
Between that building and the one to the left.
Alright, I just picked up a longbow. I just heard a robot
I'm
do a
behind you,
grapple.
but I'm coming.
Enemy down.
Nice.
Cool.
Oh, I see him.
One there, the other one's here. Ah, he finished me. He close?
Shit.
I am taking
Yep.
fire, friends. Reloading.
Got him.
Enemy taken down.
Oh, another dude. Another dude.
Making contact with enemy.
The last one, Jeff.
Yeah, I just got a fucking longbow, man. And no shield.
Oh, no. Yeah. You can do it.
That's all you need. 2 shots.
There's one.
Oh, yeah, you got
Oh,
it.
maybe they'll be distracted trying to finish me.
Oh, so
Yeah.
close. Good try, though. I mean, you hit him. I mean, that longbow.
Yeah, it's not my gun of choice.
You take what you can get.
Oh, you
gotta
got one?
pretend
Yeah, I
Looks
did
like.
one for 55.
One more and you would have had him.
Well,
Wow.
no, I think I broke his shield, so it probably would have been 2 more.
Ah.
But still.
You gotta pretend you're Hawkeye, the weakest of the Marvel heroes.
You think
He's just a
you
good
think
shot
he's
with
the
a bow.
weakest?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I can't think
Yeah,
of a
but-
weaker one though.
Probably
I
the
mean,
Hulk.
he can't. Oh well, yeah, the Hulk. You know.
He can practically do nothing.
Yeah. Now I'm thinking of Scarlett Johansson.
Is Black Widow an Avenger, or is she just a side character?
Well, she's part of the squad anyway. I don't know if she's an Avenger.
Because that's who I was gonna say, but I'm like, I don't know if she's an Avenger, so I didn't. Because
But I don't know if Hawkeye's an Avenger.
I don't know either.
I don't know.
Right, I don't know. He's in the movies.
I was just saying Marvel superheroes.
Marvel heroes altogether.
But yeah, like just the Avengers, I don't really know which ones were technically only, you know, I mean, I know Iron Man and the Hulk and Thor, but I don't know all of the ones that were counted.
Yeah, I don't know. I picture like the scene from the one Avengers movie I didn't see, Age of Ultron, when they're being like circled. The camera's like circling them, and it's like Hawkeye, Hulk,
Yeah,
Iron Man, Thor. They're in New York City. So Hawkeye's in that scene, so
Yeah.
I assume he's
I've
in it. I
seen
don't
him.
know.
But I can't remember it. Yeah. It's hard to say, but yeah, I know what you mean. I think I liked about, to some extent, every one of the Marvel movies except probably Captain Marvel. I thought it was kind of weak.
Yeah, we
I don't
didn't see
know.
that because it had funky reviews.
Yeah, like there were. I don't think
mean,
it was
somebody-
completely without
Yeah.
merit, but it was
Not
just
sure.
kind of.
Yeah, straight ahead.
Okay, I'm looking for a gun.
Are you dropping Eva or a wingman?
Taking them out with a decoy.
Either one you don't
retreating
want,
back
or
into
either
the
one you want
house.
at least. Thank you. All right, I'm right behind you.
Opening fire. Down to the enemy. Grappling.
Okay, sounds like he's okay. I'm going back to looting.
Way to go, Grill.
I'm down to one, but there's somebody else inside of here.
Okay.
Okay, then I am on my way back.
I'm with you.
Grenade. Watch out.
Yeah, somebody threw a
Come
yeah,
on.
they're up here.
How do I get out of this?
They're up top.
Oh, another one. Yep, up top.
Sending out my decoy.
Got her.
Got it.
Eliminated the whole squad. Exciting.
I'm hearing footsteps.
Got your Eva back.
That's somebody.
Okay, no, somebody else. Yep. trying to heal.
Just gotta patch myself up. Hang on.
Any other
That
guns
was 3,
up there
wasn't it?
in there?
But I think
Yeah,
there
it was
is
3.
somebody
I
else.
did the
but,
first, and they turned into boxes. So
I got a 301 with no ammo, but
I got some light ammo I picked up
still got
on my
the
way over.
yeah, I can give you some light.
okay.
Oh, you're down there now. Here I come.
Thank you. You need the heal
No,
back.
I got
Joe?
a havoc. Oh, good.
Grim, I got like 128 rounds out of that or
Oh,
something. You need some of these?
flatline. Yeah, buddy.
Of what?
Of light.
Oh, I only have 83. Yeah, if you could give me a box.
I'll give you 1 stack, yeah. I mean a box, yeah.
Extended energy magazine. Gotta hop up here. Select fire. I'll take that. 45 seconds.
Oh, wait, here.
Range a little far. Light ammo here. Energy ammo here.
You Americans have such big penises. Our penises are very small.
Something you want to talk about?
Light ammo here. Light ammo here.
That's off of South Park. Where the Pokemon are taking over the minds of the kids.
Sure it is.
Like the Japanese.
I'm
Yeah, good
shooting
cover
at a loot
story,
drone. As soon as it turns gold. There we go. Shooting a
What'd you
loot
say,
drone.
Joe?
What's
Oh.
gold? What's gold?
I thought you were saying a fucking Japanese word because I mentioned Pokemon.
There you go. You need,
like
you need that zero.
shooting
You
a
don't
loot
have
drone, but it
fucking-
was-
you're not
Shoot
healed.
the loot
Okay,
drone.
Need that.
Yeah, I do.
Repairing my damages.
I need a gun that takes a barrel stabilizer. How far is our run?
Attention. Delivery care package.
Pretty fucking far. We should probably go.
Care package has some sweet gear for us.
Okay, okay.
Gonna pop my head in here. Ah, this is open. This must have been looted by the guy.
Yeah, I'm gonna drop my 2 to 4 for the 3x.
Mid-range.
Ooh, I'm dropping this flatline for this hemlock.
Right.
I've got a flatline here.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, I'm gonna drop. Oh no.
If anybody
no,
wants
no,
that
never mind.
weird shit.
Yeah, well, you can have it if you want, Grim.
I don't know.
I mean,
already got
come
all
get
the
it if you
stuff
want.
on this
I've got
habit,
an e-
so
Okay.
I'm gonna just stick with it.
Extended light mag here.
Could you
Oh shit.
Alright,
Someone's
but we
coming.
got. our
could use a
fucking-
heavy mag if we see one?
Oh, I'm going the wrong way. I'm coming, guys. Oh damn, we gotta go through there. Ain't that a bitch?
I am. I don't know, why does it look like Facebook stopped streaming my live stuff? Why do you do this to me, Facebook?
Oh man, I said penises.
Ah, damn it, Zero.
Well, no, that should be okay. I didn't say nipples. Zuckerberg should be appeased.
Well, no, you can say nipple. You just
I
can't
mean,
show
there's some
nipples.
shit going on over here. So I might be running into.
Oh, we're going that way? Shit. I was going the other way.
No, they're far enough away. It's at that building.
Look at the map.
So you ready to go in
No,
that
we're
building?
not even out of the storm yet.
And wreck shit or
no.
what?
No, definitely not.
Well, I mean,
Definitely not.
So right now, should
Yep.
I run it?
Yep.
Is that what you're saying?
Alright, I'm healed as much as I can heal.
Adam.
If
Yeah,
anybody
I got
else
some
wants
thought
to
syringes.
say it,
I
but
thought
I'm
I
not
had
trying to-
syringes. All I have is one big med kit. That's it.
Alright,
Oh,
I'm
okay.
sending my drone to get an eyeball.
That's
That's it.
somebody's shit. That's you.
We'll have to cut some throats to get heals.
Sounds good to me.
Oh, is it this bit? Okay.
No, it sounds
Probably.
it sounds like it's
They were in
further.
there, they might have moved on.
It's across the street. It sounds like that'll be out of range. I can't see. But there's Watson fences up top of that building.
Let's transfer to this spot.
Yeah, I think they're all the way out.
Thank you. What's wrong?
Or I mean, over.
Oh, one is over there.
All right, I'm coming up.
I hear people closer by.
Yep, I fell all the way off.
Oh,
I'm just going
hey, a
over.
dude is running up.
Somebody
the
right
hill
there.
over
I just seen somebody right there.
Okay, yeah, these are two
They're
different
sending
squads, I
out their
believe.
drone.
Okay.
Up there. Oh, right where I'm zipping to this. They're on the roof now.
Ah, you bitch ass crypto. Fuck your drone, bitch. Ah.
Bombed on. I think you upset the hornet's nest.
And he has a vault key.
There's someone on that floor downstairs, Grim.
Somebody's on our
Yeah, that's what I was talking
Here.
about. Somebody's above you too.
Coming. Got that one that you were after.
Where's this Bangalore at? Yeah, there's a
I'm hearing
Bangalore running
somebody
around.
out there.
I need some light if they got it. Hell yeah. Hey, there's energy ammo in there too.
Oh, I think I heard something on that side.
Yeah, there's energy ammo up here. There was a Bangalore up on my floor.
Oh,
Somebody's getting somebody up.
circle's closing. Circle's closing.
Oh! They're murdering me. I gotta go heal up. I'm almost fucking dead. Oh shit, the storm. There's two more people out here.
I got that fool. Let's get the fuck out. Oh shit. I
I'm
can't
coming
throw a
in,
zip.
Diamond
Get up
Storm.
top. Get up. Yeah, climb up top, Grim, and I'll throw us a zip.
Oh, no, I'm gonna go down.
This way.
I don't have any syringes. I
Oh,
couldn't
fuck.
fucking heal myself.
Yeah, I know. We're. Oh,
Yeah,
God,
I'm down.
it's
Fuck.
over.
You, Zero, heal yourself. Heal yourself.
I am.
Zero.
I'm trying. I'm trying.
Damn,
That's
Oh, I can't.
fucked by a storm.
I'm trying to. I'm gonna die.
fuck, man. I downed at least 2 people.
I should have kept healing.
And I got 0 kills out of it.
Yeah, that
sucks.
storm got us. We were doing fine on our fights and everything. Just the storm.
Yeah, I didn't even realize.
I didn't either. And it's. I looked at it as like round 2 closing, a minute 12, and that doesn't sound so bad until you realize the storm's directly behind
Yeah.
you, and you got a hill in front of you, and
I want to do ranked.
oh yeah, yeah.
Sure.
So if we can play that well, I think we'll be getting points tonight, boys.
Wait, what's the bottom of gold? Is it
Yeah.
2,800?
Yeah.
Damn, so I'm only 14 above the bottom again. I thought I was still up. I mean, technically I'm still up 14, but...
I came here to party. Let's rock.
I came here to party. Let's rock.
I came for the party.
I'm here for the gangbang.
Honest, I am afraid. I'm really afraid. Just kidding. Nothing scares me.
Opie, go lay down. Nobody wants you.
This is your champion.
Come find me.
The grimmest of the crypt is the master of the jumpest.
Yeah.
This might be a good place to land. What do I know?
Always
Some
feel
ice
good about a
cannon
grim group
action.
jump. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But I do.
I usually just land in hot zones.
Yeah. Shit. Dudes are with us. Joe.
Yep. Yep. Somebody's
Right.
right here, right in front of me.
I do now.
Oh, I hit him with 3 shots.
Joe, I'm coming.
There's a lifeline. She jumped down.
Oh shit, I should probably
Life
go
down.
for kills, right?
Lifeline down here somewhere.
I got the one you hit. I got that lifeline.
Thank you.
I only hit her one time and she was dead, so you had her.
Alright. Was that the whole squad?
No, she didn't.
Is there
Yeah,
armor
no, there
there?
wasn't. I picked it up. But
Yeah, I'm being an extra.
is there armor in this one, Grim? No.
Nah, but there's a purple shotgun bolt somewhere with it.
You,
No,
you
not
got
yet.
shotty?
I don't know if I'm gonna pick one up. Here, I picked up the shotgun ammo.
You don't have here. I have med kit.
Okay, yeah. I do.
Oh,
Here,
thanks.
take this shotgun ammo, and then you. I might switch to a shotty later because I was really
Thank you.
enjoying the Peacekeeper. Thank you.
Okay.
Here's armor. The armoriest of armor.
Hell yeah.
Wait, so did we kill 2 or 3 people? How many
We got
you guys
one.
got?
Zero's got 1, but it was a team effort.
Yeah, I got one. Yeah, Joe.
Okay,
did
and I
most
got
of the
one.
damage.
So then there should still be one more person.
I don't know why I thought of this, but like, oh yeah, I do, but it's too much to explain. Anyway, I read this shit on the internet one time. It was like, this guy was saying he was like doing some work with his grandpa who owned a farm or something, and like they were like, you know, setting fence posts or something. He asked him if he had a pair of gloves. His grandpa asked him, "What, you need a pair of bitch mitts?" Thought that was funny.
Sorry, grandfather. I need things to protect my hands from being cut up. I have other things to do with this hands besides be a
Yeah.
fucking roughneck.
Oh,
Yeah.
no. I'm like messing everything up.
This guy I work for, who in general is a real good guy, like, where I was working, there was this room that they had closed it
Anything
down.
that's left here, over here, you guys can have ice. Oh, there's 99?
Okay, yeah, I'll drop this.
Like, they closed this room off.
I
because
got the
it had-
301, by the way, if anybody wants it. Oh, this, that
good.
bot. You wanna do the bot shit?
Yeah.
I do.
Like, there was this room that oh, goddamn, is that oh, I thought that was a battle you were in.
That's the bot shit, bro. I got a goal
Yeah.
with, I think there's a key in here, too.
You literally just said, let's do the bot shit, or something, so.
And you're like, what are you talking about?
Dude, battles!
Are you murdering? Are you fighting people again?
Like, there's this room that had been closed off because it had, like, asbestos floor tiles that were broken and shit. And, like, when I was working, like, we'd been in the room working,
Thought I found a light
and,
map,
like,
man.
they didn't even tell us that there was asbestos in there until after we'd already been in there working. And there was, like, another room that we went in that was, like, they were more concerned about, and we went
You
in
guys want to go to the vault
without being
real
told.
quick?
Yeah, yeah. And, so, like,
We can fly
My
there.
boss,
Let's take
though-
fifth balloon, and then to
Okay.
the other balloon. We'll get there in like soon, so we can do balloon shit.
but, like, my boss and the fucking head of the maintenance department were kind of, like, joking with each other, like I was some kind of bitch for not wanting to be in a fucking room with asbestos in it. Like, oh yeah, I'm such a bitch. I don't want to get mesothelioma when I get old. I'm sorry. Sorry to be such a pussy that I don't want painful cancer of my
Do you need a
lungs,
little
my chest,
bitch
my
mask,
stomach.
Zero? Is that what you need? You know,
Yeah.
Wait, you're telling me you needed a bitch mask? Yeah, wait, do I still have the key?
bitch fast.
Did you drop the key?
Yeah.
I guess. No, I have it. Oh, it's been.
I don't
opened.
have it. Oh, okay.
That one's been opened. The other one's about to be in the storm,
Okay.
and it's all the way
Too
through.
far.
So you guys coming
Yeah,
back then
that's-
since I'm in the circle?
Unreachable.
We are in the circle.
Okay, so am I.
I thought that place already looted. I saw.
There, yeah, there was one open door, but all the bins inside were closed.
Yeah, well, this doesn't look looted at all over here, from what I see. Look, I just picked up a purple helmet, a blue stock. Yeah, this wasn't looted.
The wall is coming in on you, but you're right next to the safe zone. Again.
Oh yeah, well, look at all this cool stuff I'm picking up.
Shield cell here. Shield cell. Shield battery. Shield cell here.
I got all the cool stuff, man.
Cool stuff. You suck it.
Are you coming
Yeah.
towards us, Joe?
I'm running now. I'm gonna loot them away.
There's that balloon out there.
Yeah, I'm running. Got this house right here that I looted. More cool stuff.
This door's open.
Flatline here.
Yeah, I got one.
I'm gonna try the Eva this time.
I need a light mag of farming. I have none. And I have a 99 with a digital.
Yeah, I don't have a digital threat, but I.
Oh yeah.
So I need a
definitely
digital
need-
threat and a light mag.
Here's a white death box. Nothing in it.
See, you're already a step up
But
from me. I got a dumb circle sight.
Optics here. Close range.
It's just shitty looted death box day over here.
Yeah. Those are 1 to 2 in the one. I found a blue bag in one of the empty boxes in that room there.
Oh cool.
Heavy ammo here.
Oh, there's a hell yeah.
I hear
Do I want
gunshots.
this? I'm gonna stick with the Eva. There's an R99 for you.
Yeah, I got a 99.
Hemlock.
I'm gonna main the flat
blue
line
body
until I find a light clip.
I can use that.
Did you see these boxes down the stairs, Grim?
Down the set, there was 3 in the top part of the thing.
Well-
Syringes. I have 0
well-
syringes, so I guess I didn't see
Yeah,
that up
come-
there in a box.
Yeah, they are. And there's a blue armor
How
for
many
Joe.
more?
when he gets here.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even get on the steps. Yeah, right here. Damn, it's a good thing it says on and ping that. I didn't realize I had 0 fucking syringes.
Yeah, they were
Is
kind
that
of
all?
half hidden.
No more boxes.
Yeah, that's all I saw.
Already in the next ring. I smell victory. I smell some counter.
And on the Eva, I don't know if
Wait,
it may be better with
Are we
just the
playing?
iron
Are we
sight.
playing
Yeah.
ranked?
Oh yeah, yeah. Nice.
Doesn't it usually say your points in the top?
If you get kills, did you kill anybody?
Dude. Oh,
Yeah.
it has to. But doesn't it even show if you don't get kills? Like it'll say -24, and then it'll start. counting
Yeah.
down?
Yeah, exactly. It starts from this thing. What the fuck?
Huh. Either they updated or something got. fucked
Yeah,
up.
I
Sure,
set it to
right.
ranked.
Ranked.
Because it brought up the points, and that's why you asked like what the bottom
maybe
was.
They either changed it or it's glitched.
Because you saw that you were
Yeah, maybe they
28-14, and you were
Alright, you
14
guys ready to go
points
do
above the
stuff?
bottom. And you saw that because we were in ranked.
Yeah, I'm ready. I guess.
That's
yeah,
a
maybe they
lifeline
don't
care
want you,
package
like,
over there,
Watching the clock, so to speak.
I think.
I
I think.
might have just heard somebody. Oh, shit's going down.
Over there at the edge of the storm. Well, let's push
Yeah,
on
I'm
it.
here.
Come and jump.
It looked
Here,
like there was a care
I don't
package
know if
right
I
here
should
that,
zip line or
that
not.
looked like a lifelines. It came in super fast. Oh no, it's a
Dude, in
regular
this
regular
tiny-
care
in
package.
this
Somebody was just
small
brought back.
There's 5 other squads.
Somebody was just respawned.
Somebody what?
Was just
Somebody you?
respawned where I pinged up there.
Yeah. Well, let's go there.
Kraber, what do I drop? What do I drop? What do I
Might be a
drop? What do I
safer
drop?
zone
I'm gonna drop
anyway.
the havoc for it.
Guys
Yeah, I was
coming?
looting the care package.
People are
Oh, I
over
thought we were going over here where the
Oh, what
guy
are
was
you talking about, Graham?
okay. All right. No,
Is
I
that where you
pinged.
just pinged?
I
that
pinged
was-
over
oh, that
here where
was-
people
yeah, I
were.
just
Somebody was
seen
just brought back.
They're right there.
Yeah,
right
that
now.
must be somebody. Yeah.
Yeah, but
it's two.
Is there-
That's different
yeah.
squads. All right, we're coming.
Well, wherever you want to go. Oh, you
Yeah, where
pinged
somebody
over
just
there?
came back.
Yeah.
Oh, I saw a ping. Maybe it was my own ping I was seeing from earlier when you said it.
Somebody in there with you, Grim?
Nah. Smoke right over there.
1 minute till
They're
close.
probably in a building. I just heard a robot zip. I don't know where.
That wasn't me.
People are shielding up in this building, I think, I hear.
Okay. Yeah, probably. I'm gonna throw a nade in.
Rings next door.
Yep, I hear it.
Oh, dude, right over there on the hill. Right on the ridge. Okay, I'm not. I
Yeah,
don't
they just
see
threw a
him
grenade at
there.
us.
He just threw a grenade at the door. That's from outside.
Extended heavy mag. Level 2.
Where they at?
There's a robot over here.
Got
Right
one
here.
down.
He's throwing grenades at me and shit. He's out front here. Oh, he actually hit me with the fucking arc star. God damn.
I can't see through that fire. He's fucking me up.
I hit them for a little bit.
They
They just got-
them just chilling on
They
there.
just got one of the dudes up. One of the dudes is weak. He's probably healing.
Yeah.
Oh, behind you, Joe. He somehow slipped.
That wasn't me.
Oh, damn.
You're getting him up again. Guys,
Fuck. I'm almost dead.
Go, Joe.
wait.
Yeah, no, they ran away. Oh, they're fuck. God
Oh,
damn
he's
it.
all- he just hopped the fence or something. Good job, though. I mean, that was a hectic. People were coming in from everywhere. Yeah, so where's our fucking ranked shits? What the fuck?
Don't fucking know.
Oh, yeah. So what did we get? I didn't
Yeah,
get
no,
any
no rank
fucking rank
points.
type shit.
It didn't put us in ranked, even
Yeah,
though
we're
we
still
chose-
on ranked.
Dude, it's still in ranked, and it didn't give us.
Yeah,
shit.
but if you look at your shit,
Yeah, no, we didn't get any rank points, but we're definitely
No.
in ranked.
Let me look again. XP.
You have the same
challenge
amount of
range,
points.
challenge?
I'm still 14 above.
Yeah. Oh, what the fuck? Is there something now where you have to go in a warm-up match?
I don't.
I doubt it.
Hold up.
Probably just
Let's all
fucked up.
let's all deselect, and Joe, if you don't mind, just switch it off.
Yeah, I
and
did
back
that.
on. Have you tried turning it off and back
Yeah.
on again? Okay.
I did that,
Oh,
but you
okay, okay.
guys were selected when I did it.
That's weird, dude. That's totally. 'Cause I saw it was on ranked, like you said, before we went into it. I mean, maybe we did something wrong at some point and it DQ'd us.
I don't know what that shit was about.
No, that was weird. Is it? But I don't know. Grim, weren't you saying that the battle pass had like a long time left on it or something?
62 days.
Where do you see? Oh, I see.
You click battle pass and then tells you right there at the top.
Man, that seems long. I had no idea it lasted like whatever that is, 15, 16 weeks or something.
Yeah.
Oh shit! I'm a dum dum. I was like, oh yeah, it says week 9. This was like last week. I'm like, yeah, like week 9 just opened up, and like we're towards the end of it because like it's almost over. Not realizing there's a fucking scroll bar next to that, and I can go down to like week 27.
I didn't either until you started talking, and then I just happened to look at it, and I was like, oh, there's a scroll bar. But, yeah, I didn't either.
27. That's like half a year, 6 months. Damn, is that really how long the shit goes?
No, it's probably.
Dude, it doesn't seem like the
I
past.
don't know, I think there's.
versions
No,
are
that's
that long.
probably 18 or 15 or something. Something like that, probably.
Alright, now it looks like we're playing right.
Yeah, yeah. Alright, so.
Let's land here.
Get those knockdowns in the fuel depot.
Dude, I'm on this book on Facebook that makes fun of like crazy woo-woo shit, like the lady that breastfeeds her kid till he's 21 or whatever.
Oh, our
And-
friends on
but
there?
it's just it's a whole world. Yeah, it's a whole world of shit though. It's not just breastfeeding. I mean, it's all kinds of crazy fucking shit. Like people that use their pee and think it heals them and gross shit
It
like
definitely
that.
does.
I was just like, right, you know, I mean, you know, I
That's
piss
how
on
I
my
heal
face all the time.
myself.
Yeah, yeah. Just wanna piss on you, drip, drip, drip. But yeah, it's just I just saw some gross shit on there. I was laughing at it. So I don't even want to get into it. It's kind of like when Joe was talking about touching stuff and it turned into cum. Like, this is,
Dude, that was
this is as
quality
bad as that,
content.
but
What are you
serious,
talking
not meant
about?
as a joke.
Extended energy mag.
It was quality content, but this isn't meant as humor, and it's something. It's not exactly like that. It's related though, and dude, it's fucking.
Guy
gross.
eats cum biscuits for his devil worshiping ceremonies. Is that not it? Because that's a real thing.
Go ping the.
No, but close
vest
enough.
dude,
Oh, I just found
Somewhere,
one. I
I
didn't
don't know
hear
where
it
it
ping.
was.
I found one though.
Sniper stock here. Level 2.
Some shit people get into though is so
There's a,
fucking crazy. Even if it causes harm.
Sorry, the loot tick up here that had a vault key, so I'm going for it. Again, you can tell your story.
I was just saying that some of this shit is so crazy that even though it causes harm to people sometime, and that's sad, you know, like, you just gotta laugh at it. It's so insane. I mean, just because of
Yeah.
the craziness, like, not that people are getting hurt, but
Wait, so to be clear, you don't think it's funny when people get hurt?
Helmet here. Helmet here.
well, it depends. You know, Jackass, that's pretty fun.
Where's his vault key at? Come on, man. What the dumb shit?
Again with the dumb shit. Wait, so you still didn't find this vault key that you swore was real? Which one is it? The real or not, Joe?
Apparently it's not.
The way he's looking around down here convinces me that he thought it was real.
I mean, like, there's like red flowers in this like flower bed, and this is here it is.
Oh, okay, cool.
Ah, so maybe I'll harvest.
All right, so we can go to the train yard, or we can run to that, which is right on the edge of the circle. But there's a lot of loot out front of that also.
Train yard's probably.
Okay, I can throw a zip.
Okay.
And,
Oh,
Yeah,
wait,
train yard.
Let's go. Let's
wait,
Train
you
yard's
guys going
closer.
that way?
Let's go.
oh yeah, okay.
It's also more likely to be contested,
I'll come up
and if
top
we
of the hill.
don't get it,
Oh, there's already. zip
yeah,
lines
if we
up
don't
there.
get it, it's gonna be we're not gonna get any vaults.
I'll throw one straight toward it.
Oh, then let me grab it, motherfucker! I guess because it was so far, it wasn't set yet. My timing was off.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's still worthwhile.
Yeah,
to
no,
take it, I
absolutely.
think.
Absolutely.
And syringes in there. You want some syringes?
I'll pick
Yeah,
up
And
one of them.
syringes.
I'm moving up a little just to scout it.
You sights here?
Optics here. Close range. Always better than iron sights.
The tunnel
Nice,
looks
let's
empty
drop
so
two
far.
circles.
Oh, somebody's coming. Somebody's coming. Behind the truck.
Oh, the grenades.
Burning them.
Oh shit, you're all the way up there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
I ran past him with my invisible stuff. One-on-one, this dude, he killed me with a peacekeeper. And I'm just a dead guy.
Fuck. Oh no, he's behind
oh,
us.
God, somebody came from behind me. It's a different squad. It's a different squad. Two squads. Because I saw the one you downed. I saw his two buddies there, and then a third guy came behind me. Unless one guy was just real fast and circled around.
I didn't down anybody. There was a fast guy though. That's what I was fighting.
Oh, okay. Well, we got the motion protection on that, but no credit for our fucking previous game where we were like top.
Yeah, at least we didn't lose any
65.
points, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
I did.
Well, at least you only lost 14
Oh, yeah.
points. So it's not...
Yeah. Alright. We're gonna get mad kills this next game.
That's the plan.
Who's ready to tape them and rape them?
I rape them first, usually.
And then we'll play Apex after that.
I might not have the energy after taping somebody. It's a lot of work.
No. From personal experience, 3 loops around the wrist usually is good. And ankles, maybe.
You can get away with it.
Are you talking about some David Carradine shit?
I don't even know what that is. But probably.
you know David Carradine, the dude on that old show Kung Fu and Kill Bill, and he's Bill in Kill
Okay.
Bill.
A dude who killed himself beating off in a closet or something?
Yeah,
With a
while
rope around
he's
his neck?
erotic asphyxiation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Accidentally hung himself jacking off. You know how it be. Oh shit.
I don't know. I wouldn't be able to finish like worrying about like not dying at the end of it.
You're gonna wake up
Yeah.
dead or not?
yeah. It's like, oh, this is so good. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm fading.
It just it would
I
take
don't
so
even-
much from
yeah,
it.
it just sounds ridiculous. I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, my
mean, we
orgasms
should-
were intense, but I'm dead.
We used to like choke
Uh.
ourselves till we'd pass out. And it just doesn't seem enjoyable to add with other things. I don't know.
Yeah, I never did that myself, but I've seen other people do that, and I thought it was funny. Like, I saw these kids. I mean, you're talking about when you're like a mid-teenager or something, right?
No, this was like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Or whatever, whenever. Right. Oh, what the fuck? That's what we did for Friendsgiving.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
We needed turkey. We choked ourselves to death.
But like, I never see nobody ever even introduced me to the concept till I was probably 18 or over, and then I saw some like younger teenagers doing it. It's like these two dudes, you know, and one of them did it to the other, and as the other one was like waking back up from it, his friend punched him in the back of the head.
What?
Oh, shit.
Like, yeah, like, I mean, not like real hard, but you know, just like a 30% punch or
30.
something, you know, and like 30% power, you know, and like
Listen to her here. Yeah,
like he did it.
I get what you're saying, like a good old fuck you, man.
Yeah.
we're not gonna be friends after this because I just punched you in the head when you were dying.
You know, just a good old, yeah. No, like, he did it, like, because he figured he wouldn't really know what it was because he was just semi-conscious.
This killed me.
But the kid figured it out and punched him back, but it was just kind of funny.
Shit, I'm on my way.
I'm coming. I'm on my way.
She's punching me to death. There we go.
Somebody's coming. Somebody's coming.
don't see
Somebody's
her.
coming.
All right. Oh, did you run out of your clip? Are you dead, man? Yeah.
Another guy right here.
Somebody else. Oh, he got me.
All right, I had to get rid of that longbow.
He's wasting his ammo on me.
What? Are you fucking kidding me? Oh my god. I was dead before like my 6th bullet left the gun.
Oh, man. Yeah, I've been there.
I
Shit.
probably would have been better off with the fucking longbow. God damn it.
Yeah, anyways, Andy,
Right.
it was not going well.
What
I
was
hit
your
him a
gun?
few times, but it was doing like fucking something in the teens every time I hit him. Fucking bullshit.
Yeah, it must have been that tank buff that Caustic gets or something.
It was a lifeline I was shooting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was that thing. Yeah. 48.
Shooting
that means
rubber bullets.
I hit him 3 times, and that means all 3 times that I shot him, I hit him with 1 out of 3 bullets.
Oh, that sucks. That's annoying.
Right.
Did you see that shit in London where some dude was, I don't know what kind of weapon he had, but he was like, had a fake suicide bomb vest on. He might have had a gun. I don't know. He had some kind of weapon. And like, dudes were like trying to subdue him. And some motherfucker grabs a narwhal tusk out of like some shop or something and attacks him with it. It's like a fucking lance. Like,
What? This sounds crazy.
yeah, it is, but it's true. Like, it's some terror attack on the London Bridge by one guy. And this dude, you know, a narwhal, like that fucking kind of whale-like thing?
Yeah, it's like a unicorn
So, like,
horn.
yeah,
and he
unicorn
stabbed him with the unicorn horn.
Yeah, like
To
he,
save
like,
the day?
Fucking ran to, yeah, apparently, and then I mean, some other dude was also doing some shit, and then I think some cops with, you know, guns showed up and shot him or something. But like before that happened, the dude actually ran toward him with that shit. It was pretty. I just saw a picture of it, but it looked pretty badass. It was kind of funny. I guess when you're in a pussy country where you can't own guns, you gotta grab a narwhal.
I mean, I'd rather be known as the guy that killed somebody with a narwhal tusk than just another guy in
I
Philly
would
that
too,
shot somebody.
To be honest, I would too. Right.
Yeah,
to
so
be
in
honest, I would
England,
too.
none of the citizens can own guns, right?
There's some kind of very limited gun ownership you can have. It's super limited.
It's
like,
crazy.
It's
But
incredibly.
Yeah, it's like, first off, I think that's retarded. Second off, like, you know, in America, like, oh, if people didn't have guns and, you know, people wouldn't die. There's such a high rate of stabbings in fucking England because
Yeah,
you can't have a gun, so
London.
they just stab everybody, especially London, yeah. You're getting
London
stabbed left
surpassed
and
New
right
York
in London.
City in murders this year.
Yeah,
For the
all
first
with
time they
fucking
like surpassed
mostly
them.
knives or smuggled guns.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
tell
it's like,
me how
and then,
that'll work
but,
out.
and then they honestly then talk about banning knives. They really have been talking about it, and it's just like, what are
What the
you
fuck
going to
you
ban
like, cut
every
your
possible?
meat
You going
with?
no more
Like,
hammers?
And then what do you
Yeah.
got? No more.
Well, I mean,
no more
out in
pencils
public,
in
like
schools.
you can't carry a knife. Yeah, right. And I mean, you can't you can't have a hammer. You got to be a
If you
carpenter
want
to
to
have a
stab
hammer.
somebody,
I mean,
you'll find something to stab somebody with.
yeah, and I mean, how many times I'd be pissed if I couldn't carry my murder hammer.
Yeah, like God,
Just-
like how the fuck
just-
else are you supposed to murder innocent people? You got another hammer, like it's
But yeah,
just
no,
like
I
common
agree.
sense.
But yeah, like for shit like that, I mean, it's like.
The shield's good
Yeah,
job.
I
what
got
the
a
fuck.
shield.
But yeah, the narwhal tusk thing, I thought
Oh,
that was
someone just shot this
hilarious.
gold,
I just thought that-
this gold thing, and I'm stealing all the loot. There's somebody gonna be over here, and they're gonna be so mad that I just stole their stuff.
Oh, okay, I'm coming, Joe.
Yeah, just
Oh, there?
they're lasering the shit out of me.
Where's he at? Where's he? I see him.
I got his vault key and his blue bag out of the thing he shot.
He got me. I shot him about 3 times. Oh, somebody, you downed him. You downed him.
Oh, and they're still throwing grenades
He's
at me.
right there.
There's a robot in here.
Damn that charge rifle.
My bad. I shouldn't have pushed that, but I just got overly excited over that thing.
Fucking gay charge rifle.
I understand. I had the shitty Havoc, or I could have been effective.
Yeah.
there.
I had the alternative.
Havoc.
I don't know what it is. I'd rather have a RE-40 fucking alternator. I feel like I can't shoot straight with the alternator. I don't know. Maybe because of the iron sights. I don't know. But I'm gonna smoke
Yeah.
a cigarette. I'll be back.
All right.
Oh, okay, we'll take
Yeah.
it off.
So
Just a
finish
sec.
whatever you're gonna say. You all right? Yeah.
The Havoc, like, I feel like I can't take my finger off the trigger when you're in a close-up firefight with it, because then it's got to
Yeah.
spin up again. So,
Yeah,
like, if the
that's
dude's,
true.
like, juking around super fast, what the fuck can you do besides hit him with a couple of shots out of the clip,
Well, what I noticed works well is keep aiming down sights while you're slowly swinging it until they kill you while you're not aiming at them. And that's usually what I do.
Wait a minute, what? You get killed?
So, yeah. I keep
that's
aiming
what
down
happened to
sights,
me.
shooting the Havoc, and I don't stop shooting until, like, I can't even see them anymore, and then I just die. Yeah.
That's what happened to me. I
that's
kept
my
trying to
trick.
follow him, but and I did, like I would hit him one bullet and then miss him for a second, and then hit him with another bullet, then miss him for a second. I hit him with 3 rounds.
Yeah, I
out of
hate
like
that
20.
stupid shit. Because what they're
Yeah.
doing is they're shooting.
Yeah,
dead
so they're
in
moving
sights,
faster.
which is something I
Yeah.
should learn to do better.
Me
Yeah,
too.
exactly.
Me too.
They can strafe fast as shit, and that's what fucks me up when I go across people like that. So I feel like it's a good skill to learn, but I'm not good at it. I should probably practice. But I'm gonna smoke. I'll be
Yeah.
back soon.
Yeah, it's not super difficult. It's just you have to remember to do that.
Hard to understand.
That is, yeah. That's what's hard about it. Yeah. I do the same thing. I forget to do that, and I'll forget to go for the head. Even though, like every other game I've ever played, you need to go for headshots.
Yeah.
Like, but still.
Yeah, I usually see that's the thing. Like, if I don't actively think about it, like aim for the head or whatever, I shoot center mass, and that's why I die all the time, because they're not
Yeah, me
shooting
too.
at their chest, or they're not shooting my chest. They're shooting at my head, and I'm shooting at their chest. So.
Yeah, it's. I don't know what it is about the game that. When I first started playing, like, I was afraid to fight kids. I don't know why. I mean, I know there's no consequences, but I mean, like, I just felt like I was bad at it or something, and
Right.
try to avoid it. So I didn't get enough practice, and then like maybe something along the same lines maybe leads me to not think about doing headshots all the time or whatever. Yeah, I don't know what, but it's weird though. I mean, Call of Duty, I know to like, well, Call of Duty, I do go for headshots, but center and mass stuff is more effective in that.
Yeah. Call of Duty, you can put the time to kill in this game
A
is
little bit.
much higher than Call of Duty. Like Call of Duty, you can kill somebody
Yeah,
in
exactly.
I don't know Yeah, like
less than a second.
three body
I mean,
shots,
many
like
times,
one
many
headshot,
times.
3 body shots. Or I haven't played Call of Duty in a while, but it was something like that.
Right.
Where in this game, it's like it's
Yeah, it is.
much
It's
longer.
close to
So
what
if
it is,
you're
yeah.
shooting at their body, it's gonna take, I don't know, 5 seconds or whatever.
Yeah, without the R99,
Yeah.
you have to aim for the head or part of the time
Yes.
to get a quick kill. And you still can't get a quick kill like in Call of Duty anymore. Except that fucker with the P2020 with his 4 headshots in a row. But
Well, the
I'm going to call him Miss Miracle from now on.
actually I don't have a bag, so I gotta drop this. But yeah. So maybe if I remember, if you remember, every time we get in a fight, say headshots, or if you remember, and you're gonna start shooting
Yeah.
at the head.
Headshots, hip fire. Headshots,
Yeah.
hip fire.
Sometimes callouts aren't heard, but
That guy's...
sometimes
Say what?
callouts aren't heard. But I mean, it can only help. Like sometimes, like I say stuff and like
Did you say calling it
no,
out is hard?
callouts aren't heard. So like yeah.
Oh,
So
heard. Yes.
yeah. For example,
Sorry.
just like that. I mean, especially if there's stuff going on,
Right,
like
right.
I say stuff and like you guys don't respond, and I'm like, is my mic on? Like, what's happening? What's going on?
Yeah, I know what you mean, yeah.
Especially if we're like running into a fight or something. There's more important things. Right.
Dude, yeah. You know, you're just talking about unintelligible things that you say, or, you know, unintelligible to others. Like, I saw this phrase the other day in some article I was reading. Have you ever heard 23 skidoo?
No.
That is like some kind of slang phrase that means like to get out of a place quickly or something. And apparently like, oh hold up, somebody, I might hear somebody. I think that was our buddy. Like apparently back in the day that phrase was like a nationwide phrase or a well-known phrase like nationwide that meant get the fuck out of a place. Or
Really?
something. Or get out while the getting's good, or stuff to that effect. Yeah, 23 skidoo, Skidoo. And I heard it like on a Mystery Science Theater 3000 episode, and I'm like, what the fuck are they talking about, 23 skidoo? So I looked it up, and it was like,
That's
what the fuck? It was like a thing around New York and maybe a few other areas.
like, how is that the easy thing to say?
I have no fucking idea. Yeah, like, apparently 23 and skidoo both meant that same kind of thing, but were like things that happened in independent places, and then somebody combined them. They kind of gave the origin of it, but it's very boring stuff.
Oh, do you want some of that? I was just taking it so you wouldn't get it. Okay.
No, I just...
It was
I
a
just
shield
took that,
shield
shot you laid
cell or shield battery dropped.
down. No, I'm okay. I got 8 cells, 2 syringes.
Oh, the circle. Yeah.
Circle's coming in, so...
Let's
balloon
23
is here.
skidoo.
Yep. 23 skidoo, chum.
See, but like blow this popsicle stand is like my favorite one ever.
Yeah,
Let's
that's
blow
a
this
good one,
popsicle
yeah.
stand.
Take us through the train tunnel here.
To the good old fashioned S-curve tunnel.
Damn, more white armor.
I just got some heals for us.
Vault's been open. I myself have a pretty good bit of heals. Here's a death box.
There's a blue.
I hear
Okay,
people
there's a blue
fighting
helmet
at
in
us.
there.
Yeah, I'm gonna heal my ship before I step
Okay.
into the safety zone. Well, maybe I should just heal my shields. Oh, enemy up here in the barn.
Okay.
Got him.
Nice.
Oh shit, I'm gonna die. Heal. Oh shit, somebody at the other end of this tunnel. I'm gonna probably die. I'm trying to heal. Shit, I'm trying to get away. I'm trying to get out of the storm. Oh, he got me. Where the fuck is he? He's at this
Okay.
care package. He just picked up like a fresh armor of some sort.
Damn, he just melted me.
Come on, hardcore zombie. Pull it out for us. Knock down your 6x sniper scope. That ain't gonna do it. This kid's pretty nimble.
Okay, good move, good move. Hopefully that dude runs away.
Yeah, that was pretty good shit.
Shit, he's still there?
Yeah. Oh, he got me.
I was about to
Good job.
cancel that Phoenix kit and just shoot, but I'm like, I don't know.
man.
I was trying to hide behind teammate.
Just in time. Oh, the ring's about to close. There's a blue.
Oh shit,
armor
was
there.
it? Fuck. Oh.
Yeah, you probably ought to just go. Only 6 other squads.
I feel like coming out the other one's probably better. I only got 3 big ones. Oh. Oh, what was the timing on that? The footsteps disappeared before I could...
34 seconds.
Let's get him, son.
Good shooting. Good shooting. Where you at?
He's got a gold shield. I broke it, but he healed already.
Oh, come on, you dumbass.
Nice, nice.
Fuck you, the
Good.
fucking- Okay. I was, he was doing okay, I guess. I was mad because he was putting the kid out.
Oh,
Fighting the
nice.
kid.
He's got the
Hoping he would fight the kid you were fighting.
gold backpack, so...
Oh, I'm right next, revive. There's a
Oh, okay.
revive right next to you, though.
Yeah, let me get that first. Oh shit, there's somebody up there.
Oh, damn. Oh, no. A whole squad. Fuck.
Damn it. That's unlucky as shit.
Oh, I guess he's doing the
Yeah.
only thing he can do. Shoot your smoke.
Give him the chimney.
Yeah, this kid. I don't know. I don't know what a good shot this kid is, but I mean, He was pretty smart. Like he's fast, switching his shit,
Yeah.
and shooting the smoke and all that shit. Oh, he did
Yeah,
okay.
he had
Okay.
a lot of damage for.
I just kind of looked at him when he wasn't doing such, you know, when he wasn't at his best.
Yeah. What a bitch.
So.
Yeah,
Let me
you
pee
do
real quick.
that.
Yeah, should have been at your best, bitch.
I got time for suckers.
Be right back.
Oh, I got me a little emblem. What's my current one? Fluid mechanics. I do like that one. What is this? The hot zone. No. And this is the cool heat. Yo.
Yo.
Welcome back. Zero is in the bathroom.
Likely story.
Yeah, man. Just like the bitch he is peeing all the time.
What a bitch. You can just not be.
I know, right? Right. Right. So how do I... Oh, charm. Oh, so I got all these charms. I didn't know I had any charms.
How do you look
When you're looking at the
charms?
gun, you hit Y. I was just looking like, how do I do this?
Okay.
Because I just got the Artur, which is like a raven. And I was like, how do I do that? How do I do the thingy?
Come
Yo.
Or you want?
Yeah, I'm putting on some charms on my guns. That's what I'm doing.
Oh yeah, yeah. I put on one of those the other day.
I didn't even...
What did you say about that kid, Joe? Ain't got time.
Yeah,
for
I got
something?
no... I figured something like that.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't hear exactly. It was funny, but I was putting my headset down.
Oh, you can only put one charm on each gun?
Wait, you have a lot of
I have all
charms?
4 charms, it looks like.
Oh really? I think I've just
On
got like
what?
2 or something.
I'm putting them on guns now.
You can put them on any gun you want once you earn the charm.
Oh, so if you unlock one charm, you can
Yeah,
put on any gun?
and then you...
Yeah, you just pay the materials cost.
Guess I got no charms.
I think I put like the Yeti or something on one. On
Yeah,
my
I just put the
hemlock.
Yeti on my
Something like that.
alternator.
Yeah, I ought to put it on some other.
You can only
guns,
put
I mean.
one charm on a gun. So, you put the Yeti on one gun, you
Oh,
gotta...
right, one at a time
Yeah,
on
you
a
gotta put it
single.
on a different gun.
Oh, you can't have it on
No.
2 different guns. Okay.
Mm.
How much are these? 1,200 crafting materials. I don't know. I'll keep it on that for now. I'll put the pyrometer. Yeah, Meteor is what it is. So I want to play with the Peacekeeper more often. I'm going to put... I want the Lone Star too.
Lone Star. How you get the Lone
It's
Star?
one of the... No, it's a gun skin for the Peacekeeper. Looks like an old school shotgun.
Oh, that's cool.
But I don't think I want to spend 1,200 on a... I don't know.
Oh, I have 3 charms. Or 4 charms. I don't know. Okay.
There we go. Alright, that's good enough.
Are we doing ranked?
Sure. Rank-a-doodle-doo.
Somebody on Facebook, there's some friend of a friend on the people you may know section, has like a the Fate of the Furious, like little cover photo thing, like superimposed as a border on the picture of what I assume is his little kid, like a little 2-year-old kid or something. Like that's a strange.
The Fate of the Furious or the Fast and the Furious?
It's one of the parts of the Fate. It's like the latest Fast and the Furious.
Yeah,
movie.
like number 8.
Oh, Fate was the
Yeah.
number 8. Okay.
Okay, number 8. Okay, and like it's like a border almost, but it's superimposed over this portrait of the kid's face, and it's like a weird combo.
2 things he loves most.
Like, is he saying the kid's going to be a hot rod driver?
Maybe the kid is. It's the 2 things he loves most: the Fast and the Furious franchise, and
the Fast and the Furious.
his girlfriend's
And then
kid
secondarily
from
his
another
kid.
dad.
And superimposing
Yeah.
things on kids?
Copy that.
Let's make it hot.
When that first bitch right here.
I'm gonna go to the left.
I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna try to anyway. No, I bounces me. What the fuck? The
Oh,
barn.
somebody's.
I'm down in the barn.
Oh, sorry, kid, you didn't get the guy.
What are you doing to that goat in there, Joe? What?
Somebody's already here. Everything is gone. I'm gonna die. Yep, they're shooting at me. I'm at the barn. They're fucking me up.
Alright, let's go to the barn.
Okay, I'm coming.
Barn! Get the barn. I see
fucking
somebody
missed
up
it.
back right here.
Oh no, I'm coming, but I'm behind.
Ah. He was
Oh,
chasing
he still is.
I hear other people out. The guy was chasing you, he's gone. He's back here.
Yeah, I picked up an energy gun too, bud. Yep, I just got pole still.
Yeah, he did.
Got one.
Right here. Wraith, I hit her for 133. Right in front of you. She's getting him up. She's getting him up.
Coming.
There you go. That's me, Zero. That's me. That's Zero.
Oh shit!
Oh,
God
I'll
damn.
put you out. I'll put you out.
You just killed Joe, dude. What the fuck, man? Why you killing Joe? I need some fucking heals, man.
Here's that's all.
Where-
Here, I got a heal drone.
There was a
Okay.
vest in this room. I guess somebody picked it up.
Yeah, I picked it up.
Oh, I found a vest. in
Oh,
this thing.
Mozam is going go blam.
Was that 3? I just got 1.
I got 1.
I got 1.
Okay, that's all 3.
Alright, but health, I have none. So, Joe, can you do your magic?
Here's a.
Level 3.
So you were talking about the Wolf of Wall Street earlier. I had read that McConaughey is like talking to the rookie or something. He's like, "How often you jack off?" or something, and the guy's like says, "What? I don't know, once a 3 times a week or something." He's like, "Those are rookie numbers. Those are rookie numbers in this game. You got to pump those numbers up." Does he not say that? Is that not Wolf of
I
Wall Street?
don't know. I didn't watch the whole movie.
He's like saying it because like he's saying it's such a stressful job that like you have to be whacking it on your lunch break to put up with the stress. It's like, what the fuck? That's a weird line in a movie. I've
Could
never
be.
seen the
Yeah, I
whole
didn't
movie.
see.
I've never seen any more than a clip of it or something.
Yeah, it was too much drug use for me. I couldn't watch it. It was giving me the funny feelings.
Hell yeah.
I need a bag if we see one.
Was it making you laugh?
Yeah.
It's like, who doesn't? I mean, it's too tempting to think of doing drugs with a shirtless McConaughey. So it's
Yeah.
it's like you gotta turn that shit
Basically.
off.
What's
That's good.
what's happening, babe? Hey, you want to talk to me?
You need some
Yeah, I
light
do
fire?
actually. I do need so far. Oh,
You do? Here you go.
okay.
Oh fuck! I'm sorry, dude. It's a double tap. I thought it was a slight.
I
Okay.
was gonna say, where'd you find that at?
I could have
That's
sworn
not
like I
what's in
looked
the
at it.
7:15. Okay.
Bring the bowl in there, and we'll take me some water
Okay. When he goes to bed.
when you go to bed.
When I go to bed. Okay.
I just gave him a treat, but I think he's only had. I don't know if I gave him another one today. That might be the only one he's had today. So if he really wants it, so I need to give it to him.
Okay.
How long do you work in the lounge?
Till 2 or 1.
That's good.
Yeah. This whole week, it's like one day is
Is
Yeah.
they peeing that shit?
one day's like 2, one day's
Yeah.
1, one day's 2.
Tea time.
Hell yeah! Let's go for it. Train tunnel.
Out better early in the day.
Okay. Yeah. I was gonna go. Yeah. I don't know if your mom's gonna be awake or whatever, but I was gonna go after work. I figured like 4, because I was thinking I'd work at 4.
Alright, find out when you're working till I'm text her early,
Okay.
so when she'll be awake.
Yeah, and then I want to start your I want to talk to you about what the thing should look like, but
What, the workshop?
yeah, like
Can I punch you out of that?
I
Out
will
of doing the
start
thing?
making it like
No.
Oh, I don't. It didn't.
you are
But
for,
I don't know.
like you did like the one from
I think I hear somebody. Yep, I
Right,
do.
okay.
They're coming.
can I love you too?
Hold up. He threw a gas trap.
Ah, I just fucked
Throw it away?
that. Sucked it.
Yes. Oh shit, I'm on fire. I love you, baby.
Oh, the gas on. Gas
Hey, there's a blue bag if somebody wants or needs it.
He's a gas hole.
gas hole. Yeah. Gas hole.
Ah, suck ass bitch. Get for being a gas hole, you chump.
I'm with you.
Where's your buddies at, bitch?
Grenade, watch out!
Ah, didn't throw a
Another grenade
there.
behind you.
Hit him for about 50.
Got me a little bit. I'm popping a little bit of a shieldy bitch.
Yeah, broke their shield. Shit.
Oh, they got a vault key.
Shit, I need I'll take that 1 to 2 for my prowler. I can't shoot without it.
Oh god, that fucking like killed me. Shit. Holy fuck, they were waiting for that.
Shit.
Mother.
Damn, I got hit
Fuck.
with the burning stick. You're right next to the fire, Joe. Be careful. Okay, it's gone.
Oh, she's got a gold shield, so she's healing super fast. Huh. Yeah, I
I'm
gotta heal
almost
up.
out of ammo. Shit. Yeah, let's back up a little, please. I'm seeing if there's any fucking ammo. There's not, but I'll take that flat line. Damn.
Here, I got my heal bot over here if you can get over here.
Hurt
Oh,
you.
it just disappeared. Shit.
yeah.
Here, I got heals.
I've got no more heals. Here. Oh, I hit him for about 50, but there's 2 of them, Joe. If you want to just get out of here, whatever you
Grab banner.
want. There was an enemy right on him.
Yeah, you're gonna have to.
He's doing what he can.
Yeah, I'm dead. Yep.
That was kind of inescapable.
Yeah, would I leave you guys behind to leave?
Dude, so I had a kill and we were top 9 and I think I was still fucking negative. What does it take ranked? Man, I guess in platinum you really gotta score
I gotta
way
pee.
up
I'll be
there.
right
Yeah, gotta get the kills. It's all about the kills.
Gotta get the kills if you want to go to this convention of the
Yeah.
Palmies.
Yeah, so one kill, and then since getting in top 9, I guess gives you 10 points.
Yeah, I was only 2 points.
Yeah,
negative.
yeah, but okay, it's just tiered demotion protection. Yeah. Gotta get the kills. We gotta play tactically. We gotta figure out how to play tactically. What are you looking at, Chips? You're not gonna get a treat. Mom just told me you had a treat. You're not gonna get another treat. You.
Don't get played.
No
for
more treats, Chips. Shit, I gotta stand up. I haven't stood up in this whole time. My butt hurts. Don't think you're getting treats. You're not getting treats. Nope. Let me adjust my microphone. I need to figure out a better microphone mount. This cheap $10 one was not doing a great job anymore.
What does it do? Like clamp on?
Yeah, it clamps onto the desk, and then it's like it was the clamp and the arm, and it was like $10. I'm like, oh sweet. And I used to do it before I had 3 monitors. I used to mount it on the far end of the desk and have it come like not between my monitors, but like around the side of one. And it worked okay, but like it only articulates in the same direction. So like it has like, well, it has like it's like a post that goes into like a hole, and the hole is in the clamp on the desk, so it can kind of swivel like a shoulder blade, sort of, or like a, I guess a shoulder is the best. And then it's got like an elbow joint, and then like a wrist joint for the mic, and then the mic can spin in its socket. But like, so I can't, like, it's not like a fully articulating arm, which is kind of what I want. I want like a fully articulating.
Doesn't go up.
Yeah,
and down.
basically. Well, oh, we got somebody right here. Me neither. I punched her.
Somebody shooting me.
Shit, somebody shooting me. I punched the.
Guess who
Watson
got
twice.
the gun?
There's a Wraith right here.
Yeah.
Guess you got electrocuted in some Watson shit and fucking died.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I'm like,
Watson put up
yes!
that fence.
I was like 10 feet behind her the whole
I don't know how
time.
she got through there. Who's running towards you, mechanic?
Oh, I don't have a gun.
Both of them are.
Oh, there's both. Oh, you both were down? Fuck.
Oh, good try, damn.
I was so focused on just punching that
Yeah.
bitch to death.
Fuck,
Yeah,
I
didn't
got
have a
killed
gun
because
either.
of
I
that
was
fucking
punching.
laser shit. Fucking Watson shit. Fucked me up. It's like an arc star. Got stuck in
Dude,
place
I
and
was
couldn't turn.
chasing. I don't even know how that happened because I was chasing that Watson in there, and then the fence was just there. Like I was punching her and she was going in.
There was
But I guess she was
yeah.
so fast.
I didn't even see her. All I saw was multiple fences get put up. So I walked through like 2 of them. I thought she was outside, and then I go to shoot, and the dude's like to the right. So then I can't even aim at him because I'm aiming so slow. I did a little damage, but that wasn't even the Watson. That was somebody else.
Yeah, I don't know.
That was
Maybe
a
that
bad
Watson
drop.
already had those fences. I don't think so, though. I don't know.
I also was fucked up before I even got the gun. I was getting shot on the way inside the middle.
Yeah.
Either you're with me or you're against me, or you're with me and against me, because, I'll be honest, that happens sometimes.
Are you ready for this?
Are you ready for this?
Let's rock.
I feel a good game coming on. You guys feel it?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Joe's gonna start by dropping the dude that drops near him. Then he's gonna kill his friend. That means you're gonna come and then kill that guy, and then the other squad that comes. And it's gonna be like bodies on bodies.
Yep.
Are you ready?
Hell yeah.
We gotta do a hot drop. Where's the blue at? Let's do the blue.
Blue is
blue?
this little ass town
Blew it up.
with the 4 buildings in it.
Take it to the suburbs.
Alright.
No, we'll do
How
it.
about this big house in the back?
Sure.
Or maybe we don't. Fine, whatever.
Hold on tight. It's time to drop, shot, and rock.
Maybe to make sure we each get a gun, where can I land? I'll hit the bins right here. And then catch up with you guys. Just make sure we
Okay.
all have a gun.
I got a Havoc. I got a gun.
Okay. If you, oh, here's a Spitfire.
There's
Okay.
a vest
I
here
got
if anybody
guns.
needs it.
I'm good. I'm going for that vest.
All right.
Okay, oh, we
Still
all
a
hit the
Spitfire.
vest.
I've
Yeah,
got
that
two
house.
guns.
That house is empty.
There's really nobody here. Oh, you don't want the Spitfire? I'll take it.
No, I got.
I'll
I
take
got
that
firearms,
energy.
thank
I'll
you.
go for my Havoc.
Yeah,
I want a
I like it. It's
peacekeeper
hard to
'cause I'm
choose
getting rid of
between
this shit. And I got a white bolt on it.
I'm good.
And I have
Yeah,
a white
scout
bolt.
Yeah,
on it.
I'll
So you
take
can do,
it.
like,
I'll
two
take it.
bolts
I'll
on it
take
if you really want.
You have ammo for
There's
it?
another Spitfire.
Can
20.
you drop it?
Oh,
Yeah.
you mean for shotgun?
Thank you.
Got your ass in that Spitfire. Well, we're gonna find a gold gun somewhere.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Blue bolt.
There's a bunch more bullets.
Oh, gold sight.
Two boxes.
Oh yeah.
There should be a gold gun in here.
Not
right?
necessarily.
Because it's the blue shit. So
Oh,
I
got a
thought the
gold
blue
helmet.
always has a gold.
No, not
gun.
always.
No.
Oh,
Or just
yeah, I
one
don't
gold
know.
item.
Yeah, it has a,
Maybe,
it's just
I don't
a,
know. I mean, I've seen
there's a
gold
higher
gun-
chance of getting better loot. Somebody, I feel
did
like
get the
somebody
gold helmet, so-
did.
But yeah, I guess.
Oh,
Is it
Zero's got a
choke?
gold helmet.
If you gonna run with that shit as a choke.
So yeah, this had in this little ass
I need it.
area, there was a gold sight and a gold helmet. That's pretty good.
Okay, yeah. There's a blue helmet.
No, I didn't see that shit. Alright. So who's ready to do some
I'm ready to wreck shop and
Sounds good.
take pieces of it with me.
Where's those bullets coming from?
Yeah, it sounds like
Behind
the
us over
east.
there? Is that where it is?
I thought it was a city.
I think I see an open bin from here, actually. I think
Okay,
that bin is
alright.
open. Yep, right? Let me make that disappear. Yeah, that bin is open.
Yeah.
For sure. I might as well hit this bitch, right? Energy ammo, more shotgun bullets. Granata.
Oh, there's a loot thing right above me.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's purple shotgun
is
bolt. Yeah.
Shotgun bolt
Yeah.
was the purple thing. I got a blue stabilizer.
Somebody just got brought back over
Okay,
this
let's-
direction.
Two blue
I dropped
shotgun
one.
bolts.
Call him if you spot him.
Yeah.
Alright, we're coming zero. Zero.
Just kinda like- It's not at this thing.
We're inside the next
Not sure where that other one's at. I guess it was like over in that direction.
There's bins over there, but the people were definitely here at some point. You wanna go check it
Yeah.
out? There's a zip line. I see somebody. They're zipping down.
Okay.
They zip from the top shit down to the right from that thing
Okay.
ahead of us.
There's somebody
To
zipping
the
up.
Right. Up there goes the second one zipping on
Shit, I
it.
missed it. Fuck.
Hope you like the burn, bitch. Or just ditch my shit and have your boys snipe me. I mean, both things are cool in my book. But I'm going for the guy on the right. Wait, you guys are not there. I know.
Yep.
Up top?
He's down. He's down. He's down. He's down.
Up top. Yeah, me too.
Yep.
Okay,
You got him?
okay. I'm coming too though. Just when we look around and see where the others are.
You need a body shield?
I just. Oh, somebody's
No, you
shooting.
don't.
Shit.
I'll take one in the box. Just to top
Over
me
there, I
off.
think. I have no sight. I can't really see.
He's behind that shit over there.
Shit, I only got 2 shield cells. I don't want to use them on a white shield.
Oh, they're literally on top
He's
of the
up
rock.
here. He's up here.
I hit him. He's off.
Yeah.
Smoke his bitch ass.
There's a. Is that the
Welcome
robot?
to hell.
There's another one somewhere.
There's heavy in there?
Right around this. I don't know where he's at. Oh, he keeps hitting me. He keeps hitting me. Can't fucking see
Shit,
where
is
he's
there a
from.
white shield now?
Have no
Yeah.
Body
shields.
shield?
Yeah, I swapped out. That there was a body shield. I took it. Right one.
Alright, where was the other guy? Over here?
Oh, he's over. There's two. There's one
Wait.
zipping up.
Yeah,
top.
somebody just zipped up top.
Oh, shit.
One of them
Okay.
is zipping up top.
I'm grenading up there.
What the
Oh
fuck?
shit! I got
It's just
killed.
another squad. There's two more people
Yeah.
over here.
Yeah.
God damn.
What out? Oh my god! How did those shots miss?
Oh, I saw that kind of. Well, on my screen it like lagged a little. I couldn't. It looked like it lagged when you were shooting.
Alright. So we'll just keep doing hot drops and we'll get some shit going. That hot drop was not hot. So maybe if we just
No,
land right
it
away
looked warm.
somewhere, we can just rack some kills up.
Yeah, I figure when you're at the beginning level, you might as well go hot.
Yeah, we got nothing to lose.
Yeah, no, that
So,
last shot was definitely I missed completely.
You
Yeah.
watched it.
That was very close. I just started
Alright.
spectating you, but it kind of lagged on me. But I could
Yeah,
tell
it
was
shot,
extremely
shot off
close
to her
shot.
right. In the heat of it, it seemed like
So
Yeah.
once
Alright.
so once we all have some gun, let's just group up tight. Not super tight, but kinda tight. So that we can just eliminate everybody that crosses our path. And we'll try
Yeah.
to take over the hottest spot
full-
that we can drop.
Yeah.
all right. So the first big
The
big
full
area
wrath.
that we're gonna that's on our side of the map. So when we start when the ship starts out, the first like major
Yeah.
area, we just jump, grab a gun and some bullets, and lay fools out.
Yeah, that's fine either way. That or the. It
And
doesn't
they'll
have to
get the
be
full wrath
technical
of
hot zone.
Grimcanic
Yeah.
Hour.
We start stripping some lug nuts. Where you wanna go? You wanna go straight down? You wanna go train yard? Train yard probably pretty hot.
Straight down. Or
Alright.
train yard. Sure, whichever. It's up to you.
Yeah, I jumped a bit
Train yard?
early for the
Alright.
train yard, but
I mean, we can
No,
send it straight down.
yeah, I'm already
Oh,
up.
let's do it like that.
train yard's a pretty hot drop normally.
We're
Yeah.
going to the train. Okay.
Alright, let's land in different cars. Here, let me do a
Sure,
car
I'm gonna zip across.
Yeah, might as well.
No, maybe bounce off
Yeah,
again.
I'll
I
land in
missed,
the bottom.
I
You
missed.
guys do the car.
No, yeah,
You
I
guys do the
bounced off.
cars. Ah, you didn't
Every
make it.
time I try, I'm done trying. Every time I bounce off. Every single fucking time. But I got guns and a vest. For like the past like 5
I find
times.
it's best to like aim to the top half of the door with your freaking.
That time I tried to
crosshairs. That's the best I
land
can-
on the roof, and I was gonna zip across. I'm shooting a cargo bot, and
Oh yeah, right.
Well, I got select fire. Find me a prowler. I need me a prowler. There's no key in here. It doesn't look like a key one.
Is that the train? Yeah, train's pulling into the station.
Train's pulling in. And it's looted. Might be fools on it.
Yeah.
Loot bin, motherfucker. I want to see what's in the shit. Havoc? Fuck yeah, I'll grab that shit.
New kill leader. Watch your six.
Let me see if there's like a Phoenix kit on here. Maybe a vest or something cool.
Yeah.
Alright, I got the middle and I'll check the back.
Nothing up front.
Completely. I found an Arc Star. That's it. Alright.
Yeah, I haven't found anything.
somebody's here in the barn, I think.
Let's check out this area.
Okay. Alright, I found a 301, so let me pick it up real quick. Oh, well, I'm doing an ultimate thing also. Alright.
Yep, coming out of the barn. 2 of them. Got one.
Oh, no! Wait, oh, he's already knocked. Alright, where's the other guy?
Dead.
Right
okay.
here, motherfucker. I broke his shield, I think.
I'm
Right
reloading.
I'm trying to flank him. Oh, I broke his shield. Good job.
Hold tight. I got your back.
Grim Mechanic Hour has struck for you, bitches.
Your lug nuts have been stripped, bitch.
Let me know if you find a cool heavy gun.
Spitfire?
Or any. Let me know if you see any here.
Spitfire.
Oh, yeah, I'll take that over Havoc. Anybody want the Havoc?
Nah.
Oh, wait, never mind. Fucking. I just found a Prowler and I got the Select Fire. So that is what I'm gonna do. Alright, anybody need a light? Here it's like 100 and something light.
Oh. Yeah,
I'll
good.
take
I got like
part of
200
it.
and something.
I don't really need much.
I could use heavy if anybody finds extras. Oh, there's
Yeah,
some
I
in here.
pinged
Okay, I'll
the
use that
box
up.
of heavy somewhere.
Do you guys not have heals, or you do?
I just
Yeah, I got
discovered I
some.
do.
Taking a minute. Patching up.
Okay. So I have one left. I would give it to one of you instead of topping myself
Well,
off.
I've got enough to top off, so.
Sniper stock here. Level 3.
Right.
We don't have a vault key, do we?
No.
Nah.
You guys want to go through the tunnel since it's toward the circle anyway, or?
Sure.
Energy
Is
level
you the shit.
Let's rock and roll, fellas. Stop, drop, pop a hole right in the fucking cities.
Drop, stock, and roll. A hoe in the cities. Yeah. I'm with
Sometimes
you,
words
bro.
are tough.
Me word
Hey.
bad. What?
light ammo. Heavy ammo here.
Oh, somebody's calling in a care
Nah,
package down
I
here.
have too many bullets.
Either that or it's just a game.
Oh,
care
no.
package.
If it's
I
on
guess
the
just
map, it's a
care
game
package.
one.
Okay.
Bamboozled, look at you.
Yeah. Thanks for pointing that out. I didn't know they would pulse on the map like that, or hadn't thought about it in a while. Ooh.
Yeah.
Shotgun bolt here. Level 2.
I need some syringes. Wait, was there syringes back in that bin? I thought I picked some up, but
I
maybe
picked
didn't.
some up. Oh, it was just two.
Because when I was trying to pick these two up, that was there's a
Yeah,
flatline
ping
here.
that, and I dropped
I
the
don't
80
even know what bin it
light
was
ammo
in,
there.
but I think it was in that bin. Did either of you want that 3X?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I dropped the
You
80
can have
light. I need heavy. A what site?
3X.
I dropped 80 light.
Oh, hell no.
You sure? No, I dropped 80 light for a for syringes or for a med kit. One of them.
Yeah, I literally wait. What? Wait, you dropped one? Wait, what? All right. So I dropped 80 light to pick up whatever you dropped, which was it looked like syringes, but now that I look, it was only one syringe. I thought it was more than that. So that's all I have is that one syringe you dropped. me.
Oh, at the
First.
care package? Oh, I was talking about at the bin. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I'm talking about the care package. I dropped 80 light there
Oh.
as well. For I thought it was two syringes, but it's only one. Oh, the wall moving? No, I thought I heard it.
Not yet.
Alright, so you only have one syringe? Where you at? Here,
Shit's
I can
going
drop
on
you some
back there.
syringes.
Yeah, I only got one.
And I got 4 syringes.
Yeah, they're
Oh,
fighting
I'm-
at the tower. But,
I'm
some
itching
of
to
them are below
murder
it.
these bitches. You ready for murder and mayhem?
Fire. Not much
Who's
fire.
ready?
Yeah.
Heavy ammo here. Extended heavy mag here. Spitfire here.
Wait, now it sounds like I'm hearing stuff that way. I thought
Well,
it was where you just
there's
came.
some below
Maybe
him.
there's two
There might be
people.
some in this building. Yeah, there are 2 squads. Yeah.
Flatline here. Heavy ammo here.
Coming down the hill, guys. Coming down the hill
Alright.
from the tower.
I'm on hill guy. You on hill guy? Let's do hill guy.
Yeah, yeah. Hill
Make him
mode
regret
squad.
ever coming down that hill like a bitch.
Here he is.
Oh, it's multiples. They're back that way more.
I broke the shield.
Burning somebody.
He's got a fucking thing to shield up.
One down.
Got a
Drag. Yeah.
big shield up.
His shit got broken.
2 down.
Pop, pop.
Where's this dude at? Dude came up here
These
and now he's
bitches
gone.
had no
Oh,
goodness.
There's this dude up here.
Oh, somebody's
I have
getting
no
brought back.
trouble.
Like over there or closer.
Yeah, bitch!
Here.
Give me your shit, ho! I want your shit!
Yeah, I, wa-
Oh my god, I have so much heavy ammo.
I should.
I have like
I
400
should clip
bullets.
that. I definitely will. I walked up and just like shot this dude in the back of the. Oh shit! I'm
You're
coming.
getting shot.
Ah! Don't you dare try to fuck with me, you bitch!
Hell yeah. Heals. Heal up room if you can.
Frag grenade here. Energy ammo here.
I need throwables. I use
Oh, there's
all mine.
heavy ammo here. Rings moving. We're gonna go. We're gonna
Oh
go.
shit! Now I
Oh,
was
shit.
all heavy ammoed up. Now I'm like heavy ammoed not up.
Down.
But we gotta get in the ring. I mean, I have 210, so it's not bad. But if you guys can carry any extra,
We're already
that
next to
would-
you.
I picked up
out.
some, but you got like double what I got, so
Care package touching down.
Okay. Yeah, I got 210. So if you
I'm gonna
need
throw a
to take
zip line. You wanna throw a zip? If it'll let me.
Ready to fly on a zip line. I am.
All right, here we go. We got this.
Oh wow, that's a lot longer
And
than I
we're
thought.
in. We are
Hell
in.
yeah.
Like
I thought that
fleeing.
zip line went like half that distance.
So yeah, when I walked up to, there was just a Gibraltar. I guess he was in his menu, like looking for heals or something, and he was like right on the edge of his shield. So I just walked in and like,
Oh, dude's coming right here. Bust his shield.
I'm going in the
Alright.
other door.
Watson.
we'll pinch him.
Yeah, me
I'll come
too.
in behind him.
Of course, that's a fucking decoy.
Damn it. Where'd you go, kid?
Maybe he's on the roof. Pulling some slick shit.
Yeah, I bet you're
I
right.
checked the roof. He probably just ran far away.
Yeah, I don't see him.
I don't
Yeah, I
see
guess
anybody on
so.
the
I
roof.
thought he would be on the roof
Yeah,
too.
he probably just ran away like a
I hear
bitch.
shoots up here.
Biatch.
Let's go get the shoots,
Alright.
dude. Oh, I hate when
I'm a
we're
little
doing
behind you.
shoots.
shoot.
You better not be doing shoots around us, man. Where's the shoots at? Nobody's in here.
Multiple R99s
Can't get
on
at
the
the other end
ground.
without burning. Alright, we have. I hear people in
Okay,
there.
wait for us.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The dude's running.
Uh,
132 on him.
got it. Got
There's-
one.
There's squad mates. I'm a shield
48
up,
damage.
Reyes.
8 damage.
Where'd you go?
I think somebody upstairs.
Yep.
Oh, there's somebody behind me.
Oh, that caustic shit's gonna kill me. Oh, I'm down. Fuck.
Joe, where is she?
Right here.
Dude.
Other side of this
everywhere.
box. Top of the box.
God. I keep hitting her just a little.
Hit it hard and deep. I'm down behind you. Somebody's setting caustic traps.
You got it.
Right, I am
Execute
almost
this
fucking
bitch.
dead.
No, in that doorway.
behind
That
us,
doorway
yeah.
right there.
Okay. Yep. Thrusted the shield.
Get out of
Yeah,
there.
I'm
Gas. Oh.
I'm-
Oh, I
down.
thought that gas was gonna
What's
kill
your
you.
health around the gas?
Yeah,
Yeah, me too.
almost
I'm
did.
scared as shit. Yeah.
I had no health. I just
Let Joe
shielded
get
up
me and you
then
heal.
slid into the
We got
gas.
30
at
seconds
zero,
till the
back
circle.
him up so he could be high and I could be low.
Shit, have heals, you piece
Alright.
of shit.
We got 25 seconds. Fuck you. We
Yeah,
gotta get the fuck out of here really fast.
I'm just hitting my heals, and I'll try to throw us a zip.
Shield cell here.
Ooh, that was intense.
Oh, heavy
Grim,
ammo's
Grim, you gotta
heavy
heal.
ammo's.
You need health
I've
heals.
got to go. I've got to
If
go.
you-
We got to go.
Okay.
I'm doing it now to make sure that I don't die. Yeah. So, yeah, I really
Run
need
out.
heavy ammo. You guys
No, I
didn't
didn't
get
see
any
any.
other boxes? I couldn't find the last box. Alright, I'm just running straight.
He
No,
said a zip.
Zip line, Grim.
Oh, you got a zip? Oh, alright, hold on. Oh, I found a little heavy.
There's shit going down
Yeah.
over there somewhere.
Whoa. And
Anybody
somebody
got,
on that shit. Yo,
Anybody got
fuck them all.
a cells or a battery?
Yeah.
Either one.
Yeah, here.
I got plenty.
Here's three. Take what you need.
Oh yeah, somebody else take that.
Take
one.
them. Take them all.
Whatever. Okay, I'm hitting my battery real quick.
Here, take the.
So they're
Yeah,
up
there
top
you go.
there.
Yeah,
Maybe
take
we
that
can.
battery.
I'm not sure if we can climb from here. It's probably a good idea,
Oh shit.
if possible.
Over here?
Up on the track.
Probably. Or you're a robot, you can grab
Okay,
it.
thank you.
Oh yeah,
Okay,
they're in the
wait for
tunnel, I
us.
think.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to.
No, they're
Grim, you're
above
way
the
ahead
tunnel.
of us. You're
They're
way ahead of us.
above the
Don't.
tunnel. All right, I won't engage.
Oh,
Oh,
okay,
shit,
okay,
what the
okay.
fuck? I'm coming back to that guy. Shield.
I hit that kid for about
Disappeared.
50.
I didn't even see where he was. I just got fucked
yeah,
up
crawl
real
to-
quick.
Oh, you're alive. Okay, I thought you were dead.
Yeah. No. I just lost my shield and I was like, damn, I didn't even see anybody. Were
No, I
they
think
in
he was
the
above
tunnel?
you. He tried to get away.
In the tunnel.
He's a dead man now. There's more dudes. There's more dudes coming. Yeah, get it.
Oh wait, why is this guy's down and he's
Up on
shooting
top
me?
of this rock.
This guy is down and he's shooting.
Fucking
Yeah, he's
garbage.
dead now though. Okay.
Unacceptable, bro.
I hear
It's
I hear a fucking
unacceptable.
drone.
Barrel stabilizer here. Level
Here, there's more.
good for range. Syringe here.
I need heavy.
Well, there's a bunch of light in that box.
Heavy, yeah, there. I found light.
Yep.
I got-
Drone coming.
Drone going.
Aha! You blew up your drone.
Here, there's 245 heavy. No, I blew his drone up.
Blade.
There's 245 heavy over here. Yeah.
Ah, did you?
Ooh, I'd use a little of it.
I need more shotgun bullets.
I
There's
got
a digital
99.
thread here nobody wants.
Shits.
Are these med kits?
No,
I already
got the
got
gun
one,
for it.
bro.
I'll take.
Ooh,
I'll take a
purple
med kit.
med. Fuck yeah!
Here's
It's
a-
moving.
here's a
We gotta
spare
go.
med kit.
There's no spare med kits. Take
We're right next
take
to
your
it. Be
take
careful,
your
we got
thing.
3 other. No, I've got one. Don't even worry about.
Damn,
We gotta
I don't even have
get in the
optics
circle
on my
here.
second gun. I don't know how that happened. Alright, there's 3 other squads. This shit's so
Yeah,
small.
hey,
they're
Grim,
probably-
Grim, Grim.
Oh, over there!
We can take cover.
Motherfuckers over there.
Okay.
Okay,
All
okay,
spotted.
okay. Calm down. Calm down. Relax. Relax.
Like right now! Do it now! 94 with that fucking shit.
One of them went down.
Shit. Yep, and they're burning.
How is this guy not fucking dying? I gotta smoke and run.
Alright, we swatted them. They're all dead.
Squatty the
They're all dead.
squatty.
Dude, I was shooting that motherfucker.
Heals for paying the bills.
I shot him so many times with the Peacekeeper and it was like 20.
Hey, let's get the
Kills for the bills.
Let's.
Here,
let's-
there's gold
never
barrel
mind.
stabilizer.
I thought I was going to say let's get to the next circle, but hey,
I got it.
One other squad. One other
Okay.
squad, guys. Get suited up. How do you get to the next circle?
Heal
Do we
yourself,
have to-
Joe.
Okay.
Heal yourself.
Yeah.
Do we have to go around this little shit? Yeah, we have to go around this little outcrop here, I think. Maybe there's some shit I'm. Oh, never mind. I was being a dumbass. Okay.
Alright, I have 8 med kits if anybody needs any.
I hear him.
Let's see.
I hear him.
Goes between here and there, basically, and left and right. Between
Don't-
me and that.
Shut your mouth. Shut your mouth,
Shut your
Cameron.
dirty
Shut your
mouth.
mouth.
Shut your dirty mouth.
No, I could have sworn I heard their footsteps. I don't know where.
Use your robot
I
hearing.
don't know.
Oh, behind us. Behind us. Just got shot behind us.
Oh shit!
see
No, but I
Behind us.
felt their bullets.
Behind us. Yep. From where we came. From where we came. Shit! Can't get out of here. Oh my gosh! Where's the doors to this fucking place?
Hostile right here.
Recharging shield.
There's somebody right at that. Oh, okay, you're invisible. Okay.
Okay.
Caustic is setting up traps inside.
Ah, yeah, man. You got played, ho. I'm gonna.
Caustic
steal
down,
that.
Okay.
I'm
caustic down.
with that shit.
Yeah.
Caustic down.
Shit! I'm getting
this
hit by
shit carrying
caustic
itself
traps. I'm gonna die from the gas. I'm gonna die from the gas.
Ah, no.
2 on 2. Yeah.
We the best.
I told you. Yeah, I told you. I feel some kills
I
coming
gotta
on.
put my camera on. Bam, bam. Get the dancing. Get the dancing. Get the. I'm a super genius. Wily E. Coyote super genius.
Girl, I can't see you.
1842.
Damn. Yeah.
Damage 1847? Nice.
Yeah, Joe's
How many-
1293. You're
That was a good-
981.
How many
Seven.
kills you have, Joe?
765. 7. You got 6. Joe's got
Damn.
5.
So it's 11 plus 7. So we killed a third
Yeah.
of
18.
everybody.
Yeah,
Just
nice.
our squad.
How many
Nice.
points was that? We'll see here. We know what the baseline was.
I'm gonna go to the bathroom and then I'll tell you. I'll be right back.
All right. Ooh, got
200, yeah,
201
same here.
points. That's the way. That's the way we gotta
Yeah,
do it.
5
to win
kills,
it. To get
2
another
assists.
fucking ranked.
But it maxes out, so it doesn't matter. But still, I'm like,
Way to go.
I just broke. Well, so did you? Just broke 3,000. So I'm like, almost at the halfway mark in one game.
Yeah, since this new ranking came out, I don't know if I've broken 3,000 or not. Maybe.
Well, you just
I
did
don't know.
today.
Yeah, sweetness. Yeah, that was a sweet game, dude. I wasn't counting on something on the victory there. That was dope.
Yes, actually, let me jot that down.
We're bodying all kinds of kids.
So how many points you guys got? I got 201.
That's what I got. I guess we
I
maxed it
think
out
it
or
maxes out. Yeah, it maxes out for kills and assists and shit.
Alright, so let's see. Started at 10, 30-ish, really. Looks like, I think it was like 10, 20 something. So we'll call it 10, 20, and it's now 115. I'm definitely going to need some clips from that game.
Yeah, that's got
You
some,
ready?
That's a practically a clip
Yeah.
farm.
Especially at the
Yeah,
end
my
there
bad.
when the caustic was down and Grim was like, alright, I'm coming back. I'm like, well, who's still up? I started to heal, and then I see the caustic's getting himself up, and I'm just like taking pop shots with the Peacekeeper.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was just him?
The caustic was
Yeah.
setting himself up. So is the bitch that I
Oh,
know.
really?
I heard
Oh,
both.
so
yeah,
you down
we must
somebody
have.
too. Okay.
Yeah, so we finished them both off. Well, I think I killed mine first because I was like, maybe she's the last
Yeah.
one. Getting herself up. And then I killed her. I'm like, oh, there's one more person. But then the game just ended. So that's what happened. There was a caustic
Yeah.
getting himself up too. Nice.
Alright, let's do this. It'll be fun. Well, don't we all make bad choices? You know, life goes on.
Yeah, I did my ultimate. And then just ran behind her and was like,
Yeah, I saw your name running. I was behind the wall, and I was about to say, like, there's a guy, the caustic was behind that box that you passed before you got to the rock where she was. And I started to say that, and then I heard the caustic setting up traps, what I thought was in the house. So then I realized you were invisible, so you would see him before he saw you anyway, and also it sounded like he was closer.
I didn't even see him.
Yeah, well, at some point he moved
I
up
did
to us.
the ultimate from the roof of the building, and then just crept behind.
Alright, so let's see.
He must have just passed me. I did hear
Sorting
the tracks.
Factory should be a hot drop also.
This blue might be hot. You want to do that? Yeah.
Let's do this building.
Let's do it.
Let's land here.
Doing the building.
Stop the drop shot.
Alright. There's a door here. And there's another one here. Maybe I'm feeling the second one, I think. I'm going to go towards there.
Yeah, there's people here.
We do have somebody with us, yeah. I'm coming to Grimm's building. I landed on the roof like a
Okay.
dumbass. Okay, I got a prowler.
There's a Mozambique. Which, you know,
I hear somebody.
What was that?
I hear somebody. I
you're
don't know
on
where they're at. Oh, I see. I think they're over here. Yep.
Oh, you're fighting? Fuck. Alright, come on.
Come back towards us, Zero. Okay, you got him.
Oh, the skin of my teeth. Yeah, bitch.
So is it one
was just
person or
one
more
here.
than one?
No, here he comes. Here he comes. Here he comes. Got it. Another one. Another one.
Damn, I just got the assist on that. I was trying to get there.
Carrot, I got a Phoenix kit. Yeah,
Yeah, I snatched all 3 of them kills. Like,
Damn,
teamwork.
leave some for the rest of us, bro. That's not being a team
Ooh,
player.
flatline if anybody's interested.
Like, teamwork for bitches. Oh, I didn't mean to get that.
Yeah, I'll take it if none of you guys want it, for sure.
I need some heavy ammo if you see some spare. I know you need it for that flat
Did
line.
you already do the top of this, Joe?
Top of what?
No.
No.
Over here.
I thought you.
I dropped the
I
Phoenix
hear-
kit, and nobody gonna use it? Zero, you're like fucking dead, bro.
Thank you, thank you. I actually,
Where's
so
the
Joe
fire
get that
at?
Phoenix. I've got a med kit, or somebody get it.
There's a hemlock up in that box.
Up here, there's a Havoc
there.
and a Mozambique.
Well, I could use some ammo. Shit. Oh, it's just a hemlock. Okay.
I can drop you some ammo. Oh, actually, there's ammo over here.
Here's that Phoenix kit. Oh, okay.
Let's reposition heavy ammo here.
Thank you.
Gotta hop up here. Champion out.
You want to get
I
this
had a
Phoenix
Sure,
kit?
Yeah.
I'll take it. Here's Zero. There's a helmet over
I
here.
got a Spitfire 301.
Oh,
Oh.
shit!
Oh, thank you.
God.
Oh, you get
damn.
okay. Mark them,
Coming.
please.
They're behind me. I'm part of that door. I can't mark them. They're right on my body.
Okay.
Yeah. They're right where my box is now.
I'm waiting on Joe to, so we can kind of both hit him.
Reload my
Alright,
box.
I'm ready.
There. Oh shit! Oh shit! Thought I had more ammo. Fuck! Dude! Oh
Whoa,
my
mother.
My shit wasn't loaded.
Oh, god damn it.
That
I
was
went in
crazy.
there.
I was
I
watching
thought I
it,
had a
that
full
was crazy.
clip. I think I reloaded, but I didn't have any ammo. No, I just picked up some ammo and I didn't reload. Bitches!
At least you got some
That
kills.
I pulled out my flatline thinking I was going to do something. I mean, my fucking Spitfire and shot like 3 bullets and I was out of ammo. Yeah, you know, I snatched. I got probably 1 legit kill and then it was all team effort. Otherwise,
There goes that 201 points. Just fluttering away. Fluttering away. Oh shit. Hold on, I think shit is in the other bag.
alright.
No. Yeah, my music was so loud. I didn't even know there was anybody there. I just all of a sudden got lit up by everybody.
Yeah,
I was looking for
that
ammo. I
sucks
had
when you
nothing.
step
I had
into
like
a
20
squad.
bullets.
Yeah.
Alright, I'm confused. I thought Kim told me, she definitely told me, like, Make sure you put Chibs' dish in like the bedroom, and it looks like it needs water and yada yada yada. And I thought that was like, usually she goes to bed in there.
But it was code for don't do it and
Yes.
play Apex.
Yes.
But usually what?
Usually she goes to bed in there, and then when Chibs goes into the bedroom, I shut the door and I let Opie out. So I like went to do that. I'm like, oh, I guess Chibs in the bedroom. So like I put his water dish in there. I put his dishes in there. I was gonna shut the gate or shut the door, and then like I turned the light on to make sure he's in there. Kim's not in there. Kim's in the other room with Opie. So I don't know what she was telling me to do.
She probably just said play Apex. I'm pretty sure that's what I heard.
Yeah.
Pretty sure right before she went to bed she said rape him and tape him.
Something like that.
Like tape him and rape him.
She said, whatever you do, make sure you're not weird about it, though. She's like, I would be...
As long as you don't sound like a weirdo making rape references. Yeah, and that's what I want you
She's
to
like, I'll
do.
be so embarrassed. Oh, we got a guy landed right here at this bin.
Flatline, tis on.
Okay.
Oh my god. why
Doesn't look
can't
like
you
he's a
pick it
shield.
up? Fuck. What do I drop? Oh, double tap. Fuck. God damn. All right,
Damn!
Bam in your face.
you got
Yeah,
him?
man.
Did you bam him?
Yeah, Zero hopped in and stole
Bam
that
him in the
kill.
face?
But it's all good, man.
Oh damn! I stole another
It's
one.
all good, man.
God damn, Zero's always stealing all the kills, man.
0 Hour had 7 kills in that good game, but really 0 Hour had 4 kills.
Something like that.
Oh, nope. Yeah, I need a vest.
Oh, yeah, I would take that for my skiz out. I was just debating whether I dropped the scout for a 45. And I'm like, I don't know. Should I go with the double semi-automatic guns?
You need one if you don't have it.
Who else wants to win this game with a flat line? Because they are like death machines. They are.
You're right
You
about
know
that.
it.
You're right about that.
You know it. They're death machines.
Oh yeah, they are.
You kill leader.
I hear a drone?
I hear somebody right around me, Grim. Somebody
person?
opening bins up.
Oh,
I'm opening
fuck
bins above
yeah.
you.
Let's go get it.
Oh, that's Joe. Oh, dude. Just a minute ago, Joe.
Yo,
I thought I
let's
saw your
fucking
label
smoke
and it was a
Joe.
mile away. Yeah. Fuck you, Joe.
Kill that motherfucker.
Heavy ammo here.
Yeah, I'm going 45. I'm going close range. Oh, no, wait. There's a double tap.
Yeah, I could do some heavy.
I'll do the double tap. Shit, I don't have a lot of bullets for the Peacekeeper. Should I just drop the Peacekeeper? Yeah, I'll drop the Peacekeeper for now. I don't have the bullets for it.
Where you guys
Oh,
want
yeah.
to go?
Actually, better. Because of that, I better pick up my alternator again.
Shit, I need a bag also, and a knockdown shield too would be swell. Cool, man.
I don't see
There's a
those
bag.
up
Found
top.
a bag.
Right on.
I'm not seeing anybody out here, so I'm gonna.
Just gonna
Looks like
run
doors are
super
closed.
far away from the team.
Sorry. Yeah, the further the better. This way, if I run into trouble, I know that I'm safe because I'll just die and I
Yeah.
don't want to worry about it.
Because I know my gamer tag says Grim Crip, but I think I'm the Michael Jordan of Apex. So I'm gonna go dunk on these kids.
I mean, if the shoe
Dunk on
fits,
ya! Right.
you wear it.
Flatline.
Flatline here. Kicks like a mule, but hits even harder.
Ah, really? dude? I'm literally like staring
what'd you-
down at the ammo, trying to
Oh,
drop
here you
something
go.
for it,
Here
and
you
you
go.
come and take
Here
it.
you go.
More heavy ammo over here. There's plenty of heavy ammo. Please don't fight over it.
Select fire.
Alright, I'm committing.
Let's see if we can
I'm
find a
dropping the
crowd.
purple shotgun bolt. Not doing shotguns. Purple shotgun bolt. Not doing shotguns.
I was pinging my
Yeah, I'm committing.
Oh, there's somebody right here for sure.
Oh shit.
On our way.
Alright, I'm gonna roll out.
OMW.
They're probably gonna chase me.
Lead them to us.
Yeah. I'm running the opposite way of us.
Oh, now we're being
Oh
shot
shit,
at.
oh shit, oh shit. Over there.
Somebody chasing Grim, trying to kick his door down.
Shit.
It's the
Yeah.
Birdman with his special.
Not on my watch, son.
Oh, he pissed me off.
He's in here. Oh, there's
Back
two people
around
in
the
here.
corner.
Two people in here. I'm throwing my special.
That's Birdman. Where's the other bitches?
They were downstairs. They were
Where they
downstairs.
at?
They're all dead.
Across the street.
I just dropped my special. Watch out for my
Somewhere
special.
in that area. Shit. Oh, okay. I didn't know they were all dead. I mean, I heard you say it, but I thought I still saw somebody alive.
Oh, there's somebody.
I hear somebody.
Yeah.
Coming across the street. Coming across the street.
Shit.
Two of them.
You bitch! You played yourself right now. No. Their teammates are playing me. My bad.
Not on my watch, bro.
One
Oh
down.
shit, they're in this yard.
Shit. Oh, I'm down.
I'm
Right there.
coming.
Or something. Two of them, Grim.
Oh, third party's helping. Run away.
No.
I'm dead.
Grim, if you're not in a fight, I'm upstairs in this building.
You upstairs?
Yep. I'm trying to crawl where they won't see us.
Go to the bathroom. There's a bathroom
Around
right
the
behind
corner
you.
there.
Alright. Now let's well you gotta heal. Alright, well I'm gonna hurry up.
They're coming.
And try to get them all the shielding up.
I'm in the bathroom.
Ah, there's
Oh
two
no,
of
it
them
didn't
over
heal
there.
it.
Motherfucker.
Yeah, sorry, I'm healing. I would have healed sooner, but I fucked up.
You got any shields here?
Yeah, but I'm afraid to pop them. Okay. Oh, they're fighting somebody.
Nice.
You can make a banner run. We're both right here. And one more. They're getting somebody up, but yeah, if you could just get us up and get.
Put your
not
weapons
lose
away
all-
so you can run faster. There you go. And zip.
To the right. To the right's where you want to go.
I just had to fucking book it.
Okay. Oh, well, there's yeah. The one. Probably.
Yeah,
I don't know. Let me see.
I don't know if that's.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to go for that.
That
wall.
one's in the
There's one in
circle,
Capital City
but there's
right here.
51 seconds, so we'd be alright with out of the circle if you want to.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Whatever you wanna
I'm gonna
do.
try to go through the buildings.
You
41 seconds till it starts
Oh,
closing.
yeah, there's one. Yeah, that's a close one. The one that's on
yeah,
top of
that
that.
one.
and then
I'm
we'll have
looking
time
at
before
right
it gets to us.
That's definitely close.
It starts moving in 30
Sure.
seconds.
30 seconds, yeah.
Boom, 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 bam, 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 bam.
Just hope nobody's in this building.
Yeah. Nope, there's some boxes. They were at some point. They probably left. 10 seconds. Shit.
We probably have 30 before it reaches us once it starts moving.
Yeah, you can hit the boxes like.
Yeah. Alright. Ping the boxes if you see them. so we at least have some guns. Oh well, we can't see pings until we drop.
I can-
they'll
yeah, I
still
can
be
see it
highlighted, I
highlighted.
don't know. Well, I can
Yeah.
see that
Just-
glowing. I can't
All
see
right, do you want to
the
hit that
ping, I
box,
can
or
see
you want to hit the box downstairs? Oh shit! There's somebody up here. There's somebody up
There's
here.
weapons and
Whole
shit,
squad,
I'm
just
coming, I'm
leave me to
coming.
die.
Whole squad. Shit. All right, I'm just gonna try to get out of here. Zero, you want to just get out of here? I have no gun. Can't help you.
I'm ending these fools. God, I got one of them. Yeah, get out of here, Grim. If you can, if you can, get out of here.
I found a gun with 4 bullets. That's it. I mean,
Oh no,
if I doubt I could have killed the other kid with 2 bullets.
no.
So it's probably
Good.
Zero.
Yeah.
And kill it again.
damn. So I got 2 good shots, 93 and 76 with the piece.
Yep.
It literally, it started. I found it. It only had 4. I did half of them on that bitch. So I only had 2 left.
Alright, this is gonna be my last game. I gotta be in work in
Yeah, I killed that
6
cost.
hours.
Yeah, I need to get something to eat.
No.
But yeah, man, we've been
I'm
doing
probably
good.
gonna
Heck,
go get something to eat.
I only lost 4 points there, and like, I downed the caustic, but his gas killed me immediately after I killed him. So like, that wasn't so good.
That sucks.
I was
Not
trying to
so
put him
hot.
out, but it didn't work.
That's so hot. Actually, I'm gonna pee real
Not
quick
so
so I don't have any distractions. BR burb.
Yeah. Okay.
Nah. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go to the diner and get some food.
Yeah, I need a sweet ass nearby diner to go to.
It's pretty sweet, man. I like it. You just go there when nowhere else is open. I mean,
Yeah,
it'd
and
be
like
cool
you
if
said,
it
it's
was
like a
a
straight
hot
shot.
waitress. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a straight shot, yeah. Well, like the waitress I works like some old, not at all good looking shit.
Somebody named Helga or some shit.
Yeah, yeah, she looks like Helga. Yeah.
Helga Martha Bertha Smith.
Are we laughing at me?
Yeah, I mean during the day there's some cute chicks that work there. Joe, yeah. Oh, you're here. Oh, never.
Damn, Joe.
Fuck you guys.
Nah, same. I'm probably going to the diner to get something.
We were saying,
And she was like, yeah,
Grim was
it's
saying
cool
there was
that
an
you
old.
guys so close. And I was like, yeah, I wish that there was a powder girl that worked overnight, you know, but like, the waitress is always like some old head, you know, Helga chick. There's cute ones during the day, but not at night.
Alright, so where do we want to go for a hot chop? The lava fish is blue.
Oh,
We're passing
shit.
right over the train yard and Skyhook.
Yeah, whatever you feeling.
Let's do a train yard. Good old train yard.
Yeah. Okay.
Just said my controller batteries are low.
Yeah.
Hopefully I have enough for this game.
Yeah.
Are you ruining the last game, Joe? What?
Don't move your sticks too much.
Why would you do that, man? I told you to make it a good one. Come on, man.
Alright, so I was able to land
Come
on the
man.
roof.
I'm gonna land on this roof. Oh my god. Yeah, I'm on the roof. Oh my god, and I couldn't land on the ledge.
I almost fell down. I had to use my grapple to not fall.
I landed on the roof of the thing, and backed up, went forward, backed up, went forward, because I don't want to miss it. And then after like the 4th try, I backed
Yep,
up.
that's usually one of 4 things that happen to me. Sometimes I just bounce right off of the door.
Alright.
Sometimes,
I'm throwing down a 20.
Train's here.
Do that shit.
and it's looted.
Okay.
People might be on it.
Okay.
Alright. So I don't think anybody landed with us. Wait,
No,
are you guys
I'm
zipping?
not.
Oh, that was me. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So do you want to see if there's anybody on the train for murder?
Yeah, I guess I got no armor. I was looking at these train boxes popping up first.
Alright.
Okay,
No hostile.
okay.
That's a
Oh, where?
no
You see
hostile. That's a
somebody?
choke I was spinning. I'm gonna
Where's he at?
shooting a loot thing.
Oh, fuck that dude. I hate that guy. Here we go. There's a body
Oh, thank you,
shield.
thank you. Yeah, I didn't see anybody on the train.
Nor did I. There's 60
I think I
light
hear
bulbs.
somebody on the.
light gun
I
yet.
think someone's in the barn. Yep, right there.
Okay.
Oh, that
Okay.
is fucking unacceptable.
OMW.
On the train tracks.
Oh, on top of the
They're
train
up top.
tracks.
They're up top.
Shit. I got no sights. Yeah, I'm pushing with Grim.
I'm just going
I
up.
don't know where he went.
Push all the way up until it hurts and makes them cry. He's behind it. He's
one's
probably
on
on
the roof?
top of it by now.
Yeah, I've hit him a few times.
You
Yeah,
bitch.
kid.
You played yourself, bro.
Other one in the tunnel here.
Hit him 30.
His shield's broke. His shield's broke.
You played yourself, bro.
Double play.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. You
Where's
can't
the
keep,
last
you can't
guy?
keep crawling and marking my fucking dude.
His buddy on top of the thing was trying to get himself up.
You got the other guy.
Not today, Satan.
No.
Oh,
that
good
shit
job.
is way unacceptable. Not
Good
even cool.
job.
Ooh, I call dibs on purple shields. I can't. Never mind.
I'm
go
not,
take
I'm
it.
not
I found
taking it.
another
I'm
one.
not taking it.
I found another one.
Okay.
Take it, or I'll fuck you up. You know?
You guys see any more syringes or anything?
I might have some.
I don't know.
I think like one will almost top me off if you got it. Yeah, this guy didn't have any punk
I
ass
got-
sucker
yeah.
chump.
I got years.
They
There's 3, take 'em.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
Oh,
Hell yeah.
I just dropped energy.
Energy ammo here. Use
I've
that
got
barrel.
some little light. I got no. Oh, I got no energy.
I don't have light. Thanks.
I'll give you 12 heavy rounds.
Got the positional advantage.
Nah, it's alright. There's another box up here. Maybe it'll be full of heavy ammo. Yeah,
Actually,
kind of.
I took the
Oh,
last 13 just to fuck with you.
20. Did you just fucking take them? You motherfucker.
Here, I can drop you 20.
Yeah, I pinged them. There's 13 right there. Pick them up, pick them up, pick them up, pick them up, pick them up.
Be
Now
something.
pick them up. There's more here. Pick them up, pick them up, pick them up.
Oh, did
Pick
that
them
just
up,
drop?
pick them up,
Yeah.
pick them up, pick them up, pick
What?
them up,
Did
pick
I
them
not
up.
pick them up?
There you go. You got them.
Alright. What you guys in good?
Somebody's being respawned right there.
I'm just gonna get brought back.
Yo, zip up right
Let's
here,
go.
right here.
Let's
Shit.
go.
Okay.
Fucking make them regret that.
You done fucked up. You didn't see Zero Logic was running by? Like, what's up, bro?
On top of that shit over there.
I wanna feel it in your face hole. Bust his shield.
He's back here. Get him. Get him.
More dudes zipping in. Dude right here.
Oh, no. That's not good.
Coming next.
You're in
Joe.
somebody else. Yeah, right here.
Yeah.
Oh, he went invisible.
Oh, his teammate's right here.
He jumped off the edge.
No, he didn't jump off. He's right here.
I bet it's somebody else. Yeah. Oh,
They're both
jumping
chasing.
off
They're both chasing you. Both chasing you.
Oh, man.
Good try. Good try. Shit.
Alright, that one got me hype as shit. So I can do one more.
Yeah. Okay, I can do one more.
Alright, let me ready up and go to bed.
Man.
Yeah, that was pretty sweet.
Joe's hype. He's ready to merge.
Wow.
Yeah, ready. I'll be right back.
Was that another squad? Okay. I was starting to say, how's the one weak ass kid while we're fighting his 2 buddies? How do we get murked by 2 dudes? You know. Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. I've been there. Yeah, dude. That's yeah, right. Yeah, that shit is a pain in the ass. I got to get up like when I wake up early for work. I need like 2 hours to get ready before I even fucking leave because I can't wake up, dude. I gotta have coffee and breakfast and shower and
Do you make up?
all that good shit. Yeah, do my makeup.
But it still takes like.
You don't eat breakfast?
It still takes like.
I'd pass the fuck out.
Still takes like 2 hours.
Yeah, I don't eat breakfast either.
Yeah.
Really? I need 1/2 hour to get ready, and that's like taking my time, kind of. That's not including eating though. I gotta eat.
That's including shower and everything.
I gotta include that too, but like, yeah, half hour. Like if I wake up, just like taking a shower and brushing my teeth and shaving and shit and leaving, half hour is being generous.
Yeah,
What?
Damn, how long are your fucking showers, yo? Like,
Showers like in the morning. It's
How,
like
how could you
20
possibly?
25 minutes. Maybe it's. So some days it's even longer than that. Yeah.
what?
In the morning when it's cold.
I don't think
If
I've
I
ever
take
taken
a-
a 25-minute shower in my life. I don't just stand in there underwater hanging out. Like, I just
No, you're
shower
jerking
the whole
off.
time. Like,
What?
My system is
you
like,
are. You're the one that's in there forever, bro.
No, that's what you're doing for 25 minutes.
I like.
You're clogging up the drain.
Oh.
Oh, gross. Yeah, dude. A quick shower takes me like maybe 12 minutes, but like, dude, I mean that's a hauling ass shower for me. But like, I couldn't possibly brush my teeth, take a shower, and like, you know, shit in 30 minutes. Like, I mean that's.
I
like
hate having
Superman
to have to shit in the morning. Fucks everything up.
No, I never shit in the morning.
Oh,
I never
man.
have to shit in the morning.
It's just my
Yeah, some
body's
people do.
schedule. You gotta listen
Pretty.
to your
I don't
body.
know for sure, but I'm pretty sure Kim does. Like she gets up, she drinks coffee. She doesn't.
Is that
But
what
she
that
she
coffee
doesn't
gets shit.
probably.
Get
But
shit
she doesn't
moving.
drink. She doesn't like when I get up. The first thing I have to do is I have to pee. Usually, like I'm like bursting at the seams. She doesn't. She gets up, makes coffee, goes out back, smokes, and drinks her coffee, and then she goes to the bathroom. So I assume she poops, but I don't know. She's also really
Peeing is
quick.
first for me,
So my poops are like 20 minutes, and it's like a fast poop for me. You know what I mean?
Damn,
Yeah,
kid,
you're like
you
a
need
hemorrhoid,
fiber.
bro.
Well, no, I go in there and then like
Fiber.
I do my business, and then like I gotta sit there. I mean, since everything's just been rearranged, I gotta sit there and like wait
And
for
jerk off.
and jerk off. Gotta wait for everything to go back into place, and I gotta
Second shower.
Come on,
That's
Tess,
make
get back
sure
in the wall.
that I'm not gonna have to go again. You know what I mean?
I could if I don't fuck around in the morning, I'm hauling ass, and that includes, you know, eating breakfast, poopy, shave, shower, brush teeth. I might could do it in like an hour and a half, an hour and 20 minutes if I was hauling ass.
What?
Dude, I mean, I gotta fix I gotta cook breakfast. I mean cook. You know, I gotta make a
I
sandwich,
mean,
whatever, and cook, make coffee. But like, still, I could probably do it in an hour and 10 minutes, maybe an hour, if I was just, you know, absolutely no fucking around. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's no way I could do
I mean,
30 minutes. That's amazing.
Literally, every single day I have work, I wait till 30 minutes before I gotta leave, and I take a shower, brush my teeth, and shave. Well, brush my teeth the second time I do it when I wake up. And literally,
What?
I do it 30 minutes before, and a lot of times I'll have like 5 extra minutes in case I need to
In
stop. at the
case you
store or
gotta
something.
jerk
Wait,
off.
wait, you brush your
I'm gonna-
teeth twice? You brush your teeth twice in 30 minutes?
No, I brush my teeth when I wake up. So my usual day, I wake up, brush my teeth, wash my face, watch TV for a while, and just chill. Then when I gotta go to work, and then I eat something too.
Oh,
and
you're
then
not
when I gotta
including
leave
all
for
your
work,
fucking- Oh, yeah, you're quoting bullshit times. I see.
no, because then when I go to work, then I also brush my teeth again, and then So
But you're not
brushing my
counting. You're not counting like your TV watching time and your chilling time. See, I'm counting that.
teeth? No,
I mean,
I don't count that and get ready because
how can you not?
if I had to, I don't need to do that shit. Like,
Well, yeah.
if
but
I can wake up a half hour before it, like,
okay,
shower,
well,
brush
that's
my teeth, and shave and leave.
well
Yeah.
now that doesn't.
Because
take
my
nearly
days
as
don't.
long.
Because yeah, I do like to not
From what I was saying, I
leave
mean,
right away. I like to chill. a little
yeah.
bit. So I'm not including
I
that in my
was-
getting ready
yeah.
time. Because I'm not getting ready. I'm literally just sitting on the fucking couch.
Yeah, but
And then
like,
eating
what
if
you,
I'm
like,
hungry,
You eat,
though.
right? Yeah. Okay. Well.
Yeah, but
Yeah. If you
on
don't
the
count
days
eating, yeah.
on the days where I have to eat, I like wake up like 10-15 minutes earlier, and that's it.
Why is my mic not working?
Okay.
If I'm
But you
running
don't watch
straight
TV.
over.
Like you just eat and do the shower.
Oh,
and
there we
shit
Like
go.
and
yeah,
all that shit.
like say like I was up way too fucking late out the night
Yeah.
before. Like I'll give myself like if I gotta eat first, I'll give myself like 40-45 minutes. That's an accidental thing. I need a fucking
Yeah.
fast, bro. Damn.
It probably.
And
you
a
know,
select fire.
Good, Zero.
the
Take that. You should take that.
shit shower probably doesn't take me too much longer than that if I'm hurrying. But yeah,
Yeah.
I gotta have my.
There's a
I
vault
gotta wake
there.
up,
We got.
dude. It pisses.
It's the opposite direction. But
It pisses me off to have to like, rush like that. Like it starts my day out shitty.
Yeah.
another vault
Yeah.
thing. But the Spitfire like made it kick all over the place. That it was like, like circled. It was gold, then like blue, then purple, then gold, then like all the way around to like. So yeah, all right. So I have a vault key. So there's a vault where I ping, but it's the opposite direction.
Yo, I still don't have a motherfucking vest,
Okay, I'm just gonna
bro.
start running to the other vault then, because nobody's giving me answers.
What is
going to
even
the vault?
happening?
Alright, I found a vest.
Oh,
I'm ready.
my bad. My brain wasn't working for the.
Are you leaving now
Yeah.
for a vault? I'm just trying to check see if there's a fucking select fire. I really need a select fire.
All right.
What vault you going to? The
The
guys
one I
or what?
pinged, the one under training yard.
Oh, okay.
I don't
Train
see
yard.
a ping. Wait, you were not running that way.
Sure am.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Are you going to the balloon or?
So where are you really going? Out of the room.
The ring's close. 10 seconds.
Watch your six.
Should have kept my Havoc. I didn't have much bullets for the Havoc or the Spitfire, but I dropped the Havoc for the Peacekeeper, and I just picked up 3 boxes of energy ammo.
Nice. Champions out.
I got like
Oh shit!
27 extra bullets for the.
I actually heard the noise of being called in. I thought it was a lifeline.
Are you
Somebody else
okay?
did this. I heard that. Yeah, I definitely thought a lifeline.
Yeah, there's
was
people
on
right
the
here.
map, so it must not be.
Okay.
I'm coming back to you guys. Oh, you're here. Okay. Oh, you got a Peacekeeper too, bro?
Fuck.
I don't got a choke. I broke the shield. He's down.
Hit him for a little. Hit him for 44.
Oh, his
God,
team's
you wanna
shooting.
drop already, motherfucker.
Oh, whole team's here. I'm down.
I'm down. Fuck. Yeah, Grim. Maybe you ought to just run and get top 10. I don't know, dude. You do.
Don't worry, man. I got this, obviously.
Maybe you can just come and. He's getting his buddy up next to my box around that rock, Grim. Yeah. Oh, you almost got him. You almost got him.
He's in the rock. Did you see him? He ran
He's
right
in that
past me.
little nook.
Yeah.
Was he?
He was in the little crack in the rock. Oh, it's action-packed. Action Grim Jackson. Oh.
Nice moves, hopping over the boxes.
Yeah, that was some bamboozling. That was awesome. I can't believe they kept chasing you. It chased your decoy for like a half mile, and then they're like,
All right, fellas, it's been real.
that was pretty sweet moves.
I will talk to you guys
Yeah, you too, guys. I'm gonna get a little bye.
on Wednesday, probably.
Have a good night,
right.
fellas.
Adios.
Probably see you tomorrow
Yeah, I'll
or something.
probably. I don't know if I'll be on
you
tomorrow.
still got-
Tomorrow I gotta build. I gotta start building a
All right,
bookcase
we'll see.
for my sister-in-law's birthday present, and I'm borrowing her camera to film it, and then I'll see
Wait, your
Nicole.
sister-in-law? Wait, for Leslie?
Nicole. Wait, I know names.
Oh.
Nicole, Kim's sister, Nicole. So,
Oh.
and I'm borrowing her camera.
Oh, you said sister-in-law. I never heard you call her
Yeah, I
sister-in-law. Okay.
yeah, I
so
refer to her.
Nicole, Kim's twin sister. Okay. Okay.
I'm
right.
also borrowing her camera to film it, and I'm gonna work on editing it, and use that as the start for another. I guess it's gonna be a second YouTube channel. I don't really know how YouTube works really, but Kim's idea was, since every time we see something that she's like, "Oh, I like that, I want it," and I'm like, I could probably build that. So that's the premise of it. Either
Yeah.
I find stuff on like
Yeah,
Pinterest,
no
or she
idea.
finds stuff, and then figure out some way to do a beginning where it's like, maybe it'll be me looking on Pinterest and be like, oh, or look shopping online and be like, oh, that's cool. I build that.
on a couple. Oh yeah. On a couple of channels I watch, Joe. Both these guys. Well, one of them's a guy, that angry video game nerd guy. He is from Philly, and a bunch of his friends are, and they have like a whole. Their channel is called Cinemassacre, but they've got like this thing where they review movies. They call it rental reviews, and they've got Angry Video Game Nerd. Then they've got like new game reviews. They got James and Mike Mondays. It's all under their one banner, so you can make a banner with different subcategories.
So what's the movie one like?
Yeah, it's
Do they do? Because
it's pretty cool. They
Go
just
ahead.
like. It's mostly movies like from our collective childhood. I know we're a little
Yeah, we're
different
pretty
age.
close.
We're pretty close though. And like
What were you
so
born
like
in the 50s, yeah?
yeah, you back in the day. but like yeah, so they'll they'll review shit like Predator, Home Alone, fucking all kind. Maybe I shouldn't have said those two together so close. But
they're so similar.
like
You know,
But
like
yeah,
Predator,
yeah,
Home
Last
Alone,
Action Hero,
Raiders
shit
or
like
Us,
that.
You know, all the
And,
good ones.
but they've got like a bunch of them though, and it's pretty cool. So they make a mock-up set
Okay.
of a fake video store, and they
okay, never
use
mind.
their actual VHS cassettes to like line the shelves. So it actually looks like the desk in an old neighborhood video rental store,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, that
And they'll
sounds
sit
cool.
around, yeah. And then like the Angry Video Game Nerd, this dude puts on like this nerdy button-up shirt and glasses and plays all kinds of vintage games that suck, and he gets all pissed at them and stuff, and it's just it's not as good as some of the other shit. It's pretty funny, but that's what catapulted him to
Because
fame.
I was gonna say, I watched. I found some videos of like where people did movies, and the one that stuck out was Saw. They did the Saw series, the whole series in one sitting, and it started. They
Whoa. Wait, they watched every
Yeah.
Saw?
Yeah.
back to
and
back?
they set up kind of like the scene from the first one with like a dirty like bathroom, and they like chain themselves to something and just like sit on the floor, and then they watched like a bunch of movies like that, so it was like super uncomfortable. But like when you watch the movies back to back, it's like the next one like starts off.
Wait, they watch it in a dirty bathroom like the first setting?
They created a setting like the first movie, yeah. So yeah, and then they handcuffed themselves to a pipe, and then they just like sat in like they didn't like
and then
yeah,
watched all the
they didn't
songs?
build like a set, but it was like in their like
That sounds
living room. They chained
ridiculous.
themselves to the radiator, and just like a white bath, and they were like dressed like the guys, yeah. So like when you started to describe it, I thought that was
It was like a meta commentary on the whole.
so.
That's pretty funny.
I
Who's
forget
that?
when you were describing the movie one. I
That one,
I
yeah.
thought maybe, I thought
Rental
maybe it was
reviews,
them,
yeah.
but
You should check. Yeah, you should
Yeah.
check them out. Their channel's called Cinemassacre. It's like CINNE Massacre. But yeah, they got pretty good shit. I don't like everything they do, but I like the rental reviews. They got cool stuff. Sometimes they just do let's play it shit, and two of them do a new game every Monday, and they're kind of interesting.
like that was kind of my
That's
goal was to do. I used to watch a whole lot of like Let's Plays, so like to do like Let's Plays, to be a variety streamer, but it's so difficult to do that. It's so much easier, and it's not easy at all, but it's so much easier to stick with one game and become known for one game. And every time everybody comes back to your channel, it's
agree.
Fortnite or it's Apex or it's Minecraft or it's whatever, they know that's what they're going to get on your channel, or World of Warcraft or Rumble Royale or whatever it is. But I just
Right. And a lot of people, even famous people,
like
do that.
yeah, like Ninja's known for Fortnite. You know what I mean,
Yeah.
like, and other games have jumped around, but like, or other streamers have jumped around. But it's like I don't want to just do that all day, every day. Like I couldn't imagine. Like Shroud would play 7 days a week, and he'd play for like 6-ish hours a day. Maybe he played 5 days a week, but still, he played. It was about 40 hours, or 40. So it was somewhere between 40 and 50 hours a week he played. Because I watched another guy who like talked about why he jumped to Mixer. So like first Ninja signed a contract, then Shroud signed a contract, then like other people have. She's talking about that. So he plays like 40 hours a week, and he played a little bit of PUBG and World of Warcraft and whatever, but it's mainly Apex Legends. It was mainly like PUBG and Call of Duty and stuff before that. And I just couldn't imagine playing this for 40 hours a week. I'd wind up.
Oh, dude,
Yeah, I'd
that'd
wind
drive
up
me
hating it.
insane. Yeah.
Like, maybe if we were like Apex Predator level, but
Or maybe you get so good
Maybe.
you'd love it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I like the game a lot, but I just after a few hours I start getting bored on
Yeah.
the day. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
man, 6 hours a day. I don't know if I could. I mean, we probably played almost that long.
yeah,
before.
I mean my streams are
but
between 3 and
couldn't do
4
it every
usually.
day.
But back when we used to play,
Yeah.
when I used to play more than just my stream nights, we might have gotten a long play session in. But I know in the beginning, I was all about the game. That's all I wanted to play was this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We-
I play
we
a lot
would
of
be-
Fish
I mean, every one of us, if you're playing, you get much better practicing that often. I mean, playing 40 hours a week
Yeah.
or 36 hours a week or whatever. I mean, we would probably be diamond level or something. I mean, because that's just an unbelievable amount
Yeah.
of practice.
And if I could figure out a way to do
Full-time
that
job.
and have that, or to do something where I was paid $300 a week. So if that was like selling T-shirts or like making
Yeah, right.
stuff out of wood, like my goal with this is if I can build this bookshelf and there's a table I'm gonna build for our dining room. Kim wants a headboard. Build these things, film it. If I can chop it up and make a YouTube video out of it, great. Maybe I make some revenue from that. But if not, maybe I can then take these pictures and post it and get some commissions for some pieces of furniture. And if I could do that and make,
Oh, yeah.
because like I'm not gonna make her thing out of plywood. I was at Home Depot earlier. I was looking at like it's either gonna be oak or maple. They had the most variety of pieces of wood in oak,
nice.
so that I could definitely do like the frame and the shelves and everything in oak. With maple, I didn't see big enough pieces to do like the framing work. It would just be the shelves basically. So I don't know, but anyway, so I'm trying to make a solid piece of wood and hopefully get some people who have a little bit of money to commission some stuff.
Yeah, man,
Yeah,
it'll look nice. I'd like to
process
see a
it.
picture of it when you're done. Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds
Well,
cool.
guys, I'm gonna run. I've been wearing my jacket for a while.
Okay.
So I'm getting hot. So I'll let you guys go.
All
I'll
right,
talk to you
adios.
later.
All right, peace out, Grim.
Yeah.
I guess I'll go.
Yeah, I'm gonna
I'll
go
eat
sleep something.
All right.
So,
All right.
adios, Zero.
Yeah. Adios. I'll
Yeah,
see
see you
you
soon, buddy.
soon. See you.
Sit down for this. All right, so better situation to post. Anyway, so as I said, and as whoever's here heard me, which I appreciate you staying and hanging out. Yeah, YouTube is gonna start hopefully like next week or whatever. I have some crappy editing software. I need to update that, fix that, get better stuff. So so much glare from all this stuff. I can't see my eyes at all. Jeez, all these windows with all this glare. It's not great, but it is what it is. So I want to say thank you to everybody who stopped by. It really does mean everything to me that you decide to spend any amount of time, 1 minute, 1 second, an hour, 2 hours, whatever, you spend some time here with me. I appreciate it. Sorry, now that I move stuff around and try to get rid of the glare, everything's all messed up. But yeah, so thank you for coming out. I really appreciate it. Whether it was Facebook, Twitch, Mixer, YouTube's going to change also. I also appreciate all the love and engagement I get on my socials, especially Instagram. It's Mechanic on all socials except Twitter. It's Mechanic G. Also follow Zero Logic Gaming on Instagram and Facebook. Anybody who wants to join, you're looking for a community of mostly like-minded individuals who like the game as often as we can, get together and game, who are into shooters and RPGs and whatever. Good group of people. Both of those people are I was playing with Grim and Zero. Also Zed, who's in here all the time, and Armored Ozzy, who's in here all the time. Yeah, more than welcome to join. Yeah, that's it. All right, so thank you for coming out. I really appreciate everybody who didn't come out.